At 1313 Cemetery Lane, on a vacant plot encircled by swamps and a stagnant moat, rose a looming mansion, majestic in structure but drenched in decay. Its facade was cloaked in thick ivy and gnarled vines, the iron knockers shaped like grotesque faces, twitching as though alive. Even the rusted mailbox seemed to leer at passers-by, a silent sentinel warning the curious away. Inside, the mansion was a shadowy maze of hidden corridors and secret chambers, each corner packed with eerie relics and unsettling statues. The air was heavy with the scent of old wood and wax, and every flicker of candlelight cast exaggerated, almost theatrical shadows. In one particular parlor, a grand room draped in faded tapestries and paintings that seemed to watch, the Addams family was engaged in a delicate conversation. Cobweb-covered chandeliers swayed gently overhead, their skeletal decor throwing dim, flickering light across the velvet furniture and stone hearth. A roaring fire crackled in the fireplace, adding a deceptive warmth to the otherwise somber room. On a black velvet settee sat a striking woman with porcelain skin and long, raven black hair cascading over a gothic black dress. Morticia Addams, timeless and elegant, was smiling softly. Beside her was her husband, Gomez Addams, shorter, stout, with slicked back hair, a pencil-thin mustache, and a crooked charm that seemed carved from another era. Across from them sat their daughter, Wednesday Addams, as pale as bone, her dark eyes rimmed in black, her expression cold and unreadable. Her black dress mirrored Morticia's, only smaller and more severe. Her braided hair fell like funeral cords over her shoulders. Morticia spoke first, her voice smooth and affectionate. "My darling, how long must you stay cross with us?" "As long as necessary," Wednesday replied flatly. "You enrolled me at Nevermore without my permission. I don't want to follow in your footsteps, mother." "Oh, my little serpent," Morticia cooed. Gomez chuckled. "You'll love it there, Querida. Won't she, Morticia?" "Without a doubt. It's the perfect place for her." "Among her own kind," Morticia replied, adjusting a silk cuff. Wednesday's eyes narrowed slightly. "Why?" "Because it was perfect for you. It's not about reliving my life. It's about you finally being with classmates who understand you. Normies rarely do, especially when you're an Addams," Morticia said evenly. "And no, you're not attending the Academy of the Dark Arts. That topic is closed," she added, anticipating Wednesday's rebuttal. "Nevermore is magical in more ways than one," Gomez added, wrapping an arm around Morticia. "It's where we met, where love blossomed." "Spare me," Wednesday muttered. Her parents had already kissed each other passionately 10 times today. She'd rather exhume a raccoon than witness one more. "But you like this," Gomez grinned ghoulishly. "Not long ago, there were attacks, hooded figures, deaths, hags. Quite the horror show." For the first time during the conversation, Wednesday's interest peaked. "Oh yes," Morticia added. "And Luke Poe is there now." Luke Poe. The name ignited a flicker of curiosity in Wednesday's dark eyes before fading again. "John Poe's son. Brilliant boy. Murdered someone, they say," Gomez added cheerfully. "Maybe you'll fall for him and take revenge on the Spellmans together." "A revenge couple," Morticia mused wistfully. "How romantic." "Don't be ridiculous," Wednesday deadpanned. "Fine, I'll go." She stood without ceremony and left the room, the tails of her black dress trailing behind her like smoke. Gomez watched her go, eyes narrowing. "Did you see that? A spark of something. Could she be intrigued?" Morticia smiled. "It's normal. He's dangerous and artistic. What girl wouldn't be curious? His book Carrie is a bestseller, and now he's published a second. Even Wednesday read it. Don't tell her I looked through her room. She's found her competition," Gomez said, pride in his voice. "He's honoring Edgar Allan Poe well." Morticia nodded. "Wednesday's brilliant, but she's never been challenged. Maybe this time, she'll find her equals or her enemies." Nevermore Academy, Jericho, Vermont. Classes had already begun at Nevermore when Wednesday and her parents met with Principal Larissa Weems. Her office, dignified and orderly, contrasted starkly with the chaotic elegance of the Addams home. Larissa glanced at the academic file in front of her. 7 schools in 4 years. That's quite a journey. There's no cage that can hold me, Wednesday replied coolly. This place will be no different. What she means, Gomez interjected quickly, is that we appreciate the opportunity. We apologize for the delay. Bureaucracy has a way of tangling everything, Morticia added smoothly. Larissa knew well that Adam's influence ran deep. Expulsions could mar a student's record, but this family's name opened doors even bureaucracy couldn't close. Besides, psychic talents were often better nurtured at home. Boarding school was a rare path for Adam's children. No harm done, Larissa said with a smile. Wednesday will be placed in the Ophelia dorm. Same as you, Morticia. Your roommate will be Enid Sinclair. Classes have started, but we'll introduce you shortly. Gomez embraced his daughter. Break a leg, my storm cloud. Wednesday didn't hug back, but she allowed it. That was rare. Morticia leaned in, but stopped when Wednesday subtly leaned away. Make friends. Enjoy yourself. Wednesday offered a muted farewell, then followed Principal Weems through the grand halls of Nevermore. Her custom black version of a uniform fluttered as she walked, refusing the school's standard indigo. Your first class is marginal history. Enid will give you a full schedule later, Weems informed her. Wednesday barely nodded. Their footsteps echoed through the stone corridors, the silence between them thick with expectation. A new chapter had begun, and this time, it was written in ink as dark as her dress. Nevermore Academy was founded in 1791 by Nathaniel Faulkner, droned Professor Meyer, his voice dragging like a funeral march. A centenarian vampire, Faulkner traveled the globe cataloging outcast communities before establishing the school. Luke Post slouched in the back row, eyes heavy, fighting off the siren call of sleep. History class was always a slog. This one in particular reminded him of Harry Potter's History of Magic, complete with a professor who seemed half-ghost himself. Thankfully, salvation came in the form of a knock at the classroom door. The professor paused mid-monologue. Enter, he said with minimal enthusiasm. All eyes turned to the doorway. Principal Larissa Weems stepped in, regal in her tailored suit. Beside her stood a girl, short, pale, clad in a customized black Nevermore uniform. 2 long braids framed her expressionless face. Her black eyes were hollow and still. Her presence was like a void that swallowed sound. Luke blinked, suddenly alert. The drowsiness that clung to him vanished. What the hell is she doing here already? He thought. He recognized her instantly. He would never mistake that face. Wednesday Addams. He remembered her story well, from a world that once existed only on screens. She wasn't supposed to arrive until mid-year of the following term, in 11th grade. This was premature. Good morning, students, Weems said. Thank you, Professor Meyer. I have an announcement. Today, you'll be joined by a new student. I expect you to welcome her with grace. The girl didn't move. She didn't smile. Wednesday Addams, she said flatly. Silence stretched. The Addams family? As in the Addams family. I heard they sleep in coffins. They're real. Whispers rippled through the room like a low wind, the weight of her name stirring equal parts awe and apprehension. The last Addams to grace Nevermore was Gomez Addams. Coincidentally, the same time Luke's father, John Poe, attended. Enough chatter, Professor Meyer barked, silencing the class. Miss Addams, take the empty seat, back row right side. That was the desk next to Luke. Wednesday moved with measured steps, as if marching to a silent metronome. Her eyes never wavered, her posture unbroken. As she sat, her gaze remained fixed forward, unbothered by the attention, unmoved by the whispers. The butterfly effect. Luke thought. Something had shifted. Her aura was darker than he expected, more potent than the version from his memories. She looked like the Wednesday from the series, but somehow more real, more dangerous. Sensing his stare, Wednesday slowly turned her head toward him with mechanical precision. Her eyes locked with his, unblinking, abyssal. For a moment, he felt exposed, dissected. And then, she turned away. Luke exhaled. What the hell kind of aura is that? Alien? Eldritch? Weems exited, and Meyer resumed his monotone lecture. Luke kept sneaking glances, wrestling with thoughts. Why did she arrive early? Was it because of the attacks? Or something else? What about Crackstone? Hide? Stop staring at me, Wednesday said without looking. Luke blinked, caught. So much for stealth. My apologies, he replied with mock concern. I thought your complexion meant you might faint. First day nerves. Wednesday's response was as cold and effortless as an execution. My pallor is a reflection of my disinterest in the trivialities of this world. As for nerves, I find the concept quaint. I'm actually eager to see what sort of lost souls haunt this place. Luke raised an eyebrow. Excited? Not a flicker of emotion crossed her face. Not a single twitch. And you? She continued, her gaze chilling. Or is your talent limited to diagnosing anemia from across the room? Luke opened his mouth, but no clever reply came. She looked forward again, victorious. Before he could recover, the professor called out, Miss Adams, read from the section titled History of Nevermore. I don't have a textbook, she replied evenly. I haven't received my schedule. Professor Meyer frowned. Mr. Poe, share your book with her. Reluctantly, Luke slid his desk closer and opened the book between them. So he is Luke Poe, Wednesday thought, glancing sideways. Asterisk the author of Carrie and the Mystery of Salem Slots. She had read both. She would never admit it aloud, but she found his work impressive, eerily reminiscent of Bram Stoker. She hadn't expected him to be a fellow student. Stop staring, Luke whispered, smirking. Wednesday ignored him and began reading aloud. Her voice, flat and mechanical, matched the professor's in dreariness. Together, they read in silence for the remainder of the class. When it ended, they parted without a word. Luke joined Xavier and Ajax for lunch. Wednesday was immediately surrounded by curious students. None of them realized their enthusiasm would be short-lived. Psychic powers, too, third class of the day. The classroom buzzed with low conversation. The air was dense with psychic energy. Only 12 students had the gift this year. 3 new additions, including Wednesday. Professor Charles Faulkner stood at the front, descendant of Nathaniel Faulkner himself. His family name carried weight, as did his presence. We have a new addition to the class today. Though I'm sure you already know her, Miss Adams, please introduce yourself. Wednesday Adams, she said, once again making no effort to elaborate. Luke smirked. Consistent branding. Succinct. Now, Miss Adams, what is your aura classification? Black, she said simply. The class stirred. Whispers rose. Even Luke looked up. A black aura? It suited her, but it was rare. And dangerous. Luke knew she was a dual aura user. Her visions would eventually awaken, revealing a second, violet aura. Maybe they already had. Faulkner studied her. Fascinating. The only student with a black aura in this class. Luke made a mental note to look up black aura traits in the Nightshade Society's library. He'd have to sneak in again. Not ideal. Especially since things with Veronica were tense. The summer hadn't helped. She might have caught him with Emily, or maybe she was just over him. Now that we're 12, we'll work in pairs, Faulkner continued. Choose a partner. These groups will last the entire year. Luke instantly scanned for Xavier. Already paired up. Traitor, Luke cursed internally. Everyone paired off. Everyone except Luke and Wednesday. Both sat like statues, unmoving, unbothered. Luke's phone buzzed. Xavier. Sorry, bro owed this guy a favor. You good? Luke, fine. Time's up. Faulkner announced. Luke, Wednesday, you're the last pair. No, they said in unison. The professor blinked. Can I work alone? They both asked together again. No. Faulkner said, eyes narrowing. You'll work together. End of discussion. He turned back to his notes. Luke leaned back in his chair and sighed. Wednesday sat perfectly straight, her expression unreadable. For better or worse, their fates were now entangled. And Faulkner had no idea what chaos he'd just unleashed.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
As you know, to work in the Council Outcast Police, you must have control of your skills and improve your power. So in the next class, we will have training. We will have a direct elimination tournament. The groups you put together will face each other, said Charles. Many students had glass sparkles in their eyes. Working on the Outcast Council was the dream of many. They were especially working on the outcast police force, where the real action was, not in the bureaucratic part of the council. The council, Luke thought. The Outcast Council of America is an institution made up of a coalition of outcasts who advocate for survival and balance between the different outcast groups. It is the force of law and order, like the government of a normie community, but with very different laws. The outcast police are under the orders of the council. Most of the outcasts want to work there, as that is where the action is. For Luke, it's sort of like the Ministry of Magic in Harry Potter with a few differences. For one thing, the council does not seek to keep its existence hidden from the normies. They could do that if they set their minds to it. Luke could erase memories and create new ones for an outcast. With normies doing that is easier. However, it is not something the outcast society seeks. To normies, their existence is confusing, and most ordinary normies think of vampires, werewolves, and the like as myths. Only the upper echelons of normie society know about their existence. This is because the outcast population is very low compared to normies, which makes their existence difficult for normies to prove. The Outcast Police has several specialized departments where an outcast could work. These are Psychic Investigation Department, formed exclusively by psychics who are dedicated to investigating and containing threats related to mental and emotional manipulation. Monster Control Department. Powerful outcasts are in charge of handling and containing dangerous creatures, such as insane hags or strange and dangerous creatures. Black Magic Department. This department is in charge of tracking and stopping those outcasts who use dark magic to attack innocent outcasts and normies. Dark magic is not forbidden in the outcast society. You become a criminal if you use it to kill innocents, especially normies, as they would put the outcasts in a complicated situation with the normie government. The same as mental or emotional manipulation. Using it to fight or defend yourself in deathmatch is not a crime. A crime is if you use it to manipulate normies or innocent outcasts. Outcast Containment Department. In charge of locating and detaining outcasts who abuse their power and pose a threat to other innocent outcasts and normies. Finally, a department known to a few people. The Demon Extermination Department. As the name suggests, the task of this department is to locate demonic activity and to murder without hesitation the culprit of this. How did Luke know about this department? Because Edgar told him. In his past life, Edgar was the leader of this department, the position with the most power. To enter this department, you had to have exceptional skills, both in combat and in knowledge. Already in itself, in any of these departments, it is difficult to enter, but in this one, it is even more so. To enter any of these departments, you had to be the best of the best, since you will be facing in most cases dangerous individuals or monsters with demonic powers. The most dangerous of all is the Demon Extermination Department, as you are up against people with demonic powers. Luke wonders how strong someone who made a deal with a demon will be. So you'll have to know your partner to prepare for combat, Charles said. Should I join the council in the future? Thought Luke as the class continued. With the money he earned as a writer, there was no need for him to work. Neither for the Society of Outcasts nor for the normal society. But if he wants to restore the Poe family, he will have to unite to build power. Having an important position in the council would be very useful. Of course, before that, he must survive the Spellmans and show the outcast society that this family has demonic ties, which will be the family's undoing if Luke manages to expose them. The bad news is that the Spellmans are sure to have several members of their family on the council and in the outcast police force. This would explain how it is that so far no one knows they made deals with demons. As much as he didn't want to admit it, Luke was proud to carry the Poe name. He didn't want the ancient family of psychics to die because of him, which is why he's been considering rebirthing it. Besides power and influence, I'll need a wife, Luke thought, and for some reason looked sideways on Wednesday. Edgar had implanted in him very well that he needed to have psychic heirs and, if possible, 2 auras, which would make the Poe family reborn like a phoenix. Wednesday had 2 auras, and he had 3. If they have children, they would be guaranteed to have 2 auras. something super rare in psychic families. Wednesday again noticed Luke's gaze on her and looked at him. Only this time, she didn't say anything. After a few seconds, they both looked forward again. No, what am I thinking? It would be impossible to be boyfriend with this girl, Luke thought, shaking his head. From what he knew thanks to the series on Netflix and other Addams Family adaptations, Wednesday has a dark, narcissistic, and somewhat psychopathic personality. She tortures her little brother, something she claims herself, and displays several sociopathic traits. These are the adaptations he saw in his past life. In this world he lives in now, she may be darker and more psychopathic. After all, this world is much darker and more dangerous than he thought, and not everything is the same as in the adaptations. For example, there were no auras, and Wednesday only had psychic visions. Instead, here she already said she has a black aura. The first change there is in her. With all these characteristics, how would he make her fall in love? Also, he doesn't want to be with a psychopath. Although in the series, she was interested in a normie who was a Hyde. Luke thought this seemed unreal to him in the series. With Wednesday's personality, for her to fall in love with a normie who gave her flowers and made her watch romantic movies seemed unreal. The attraction of opposites, thought Luke. He had become Enid's boyfriend, and the two were very different. He always thought that for a romantic interest, you had to find a person with similar characteristics to your own, but that didn't seem quite right. Class dismissed. Luke looked up and noticed Wednesday standing in front of his desk. The girl was staring at him with her black eyes and the same expression since she stepped on in Nevermore. "Do you want to talk about the groups?" asked Luke as he noticed Wednesday was still staring at him. Her eyes didn't even seem to blink. Since they would be fighting other psychics together, maybe she wanted to strategize or know Luke's strengths. "No, I just want to tell you not to look for me to talk about it. I alone am enough to defeat the two psychics. Just don't get in the way," Wednesday said in a tone that held no disdain, no arrogance. She said it naturally, as if it were a given. "Oh, well," Luke said, not knowing what else to say. Nor would he start an argument that he knew would be pointless with someone like Wednesday. He wouldn't want to waste his energy. He also had no interest in the practice battle. Last year, he took on 4 outcasts who wanted to kill him and came out victorious. Besides, he trained all summer like crazy. He didn't have high expectations of his teammates' combat power. He thought he could defeat them easily. So it's better to let someone else do the annoying work. Wednesday turned and left. Her expression changed slightly. It's weird. They usually always get angry. Curious, thought Wednesday with a slight surge of interest towards the individual named Luke Poe. As Wednesday left the room, she was intercepted by a blonde, blue-eyed girl. Her hair had blue highlights and pink highlights at the ends. "Hi, my name is Enid. I'm your roommate. Principal Weems told me to give you a quick tour of Nevermore," the girl said with a smile and a great enthusiasm that seemed to affect Wednesday negatively for some reason. Wednesday wanted to dodge and get away from Enid as quickly as possible, but Enid wouldn't let such a thing happen. The principal gave her a task, and she would accomplish it. Besides, she was to make friends with her new roommate. "I don't need a tour. Stop getting in the way," Wednesday said coldly. "How rude. I won't stop bothering you until the tour is completed," said Enid stubbornly. Wednesday stared at Enid. "Fine. Be quick," she said after a few seconds. "Great. Follow me," said Enid with a smile and started to walk. Nevermore was founded dash. "I know that. We had history class today," Wednesday interrupted Enid. "Oh, that's right. I forgot," said Enid with a chuckle, and moving on to the next topic. "Welcome to the quadrangle courtyard," said Enid, introducing the central courtyard where there were many students. "It's a pentagon," said Wednesday, Gothic and sarcastic attitude. "Phew, take a breath, Enid. She's a new student," thought Enid, taking a deep breath. "I'll enlighten you on Nevermore's social life," said Enid, starting to walk around the edges of the pentagon. "I don't want to engage in adolescent tribal cliches. Tell me about last year's Poe Cup," said Wednesday. It seemed that this eager student knew about gossip. She should know in more detail about last year's incident. Why do you want to know about that?" "You should know enough by now," said Enid, pausing. Her enthusiasm and smile disappeared. For Enid, it was the worst time in her life. She saw a classmate burned to death. She was almost murdered, and days later, her boyfriend left her. She was traumatized by everything that happened in so few days. Remembering those days was the worst for Enid. I asked you why I don't know enough, Wednesday said. Nevermore took it upon himself to try to hide the important details of that incident. Which student was it that died? How did she die? What skills did the attackers have? Said Wednesday, asking several questions and with no change in her expression as she talked about the death of a Nevermore student. Enid's eyes were widening with indignation. Her lips trembled. She couldn't believe how Wednesday could talk about the death of a fellow student so tactlessly. I almost forgot, is it true that Luke Poe killed one of the attackers? Asked Wednesday again. Hearing Luke's name made Enid lose the patience she was having with Wednesday. Have respect for Sabrina's death. And if you want to know so badly, ask Luke Poe. Tour over, exclaimed Enid angrily, leaving Wednesday alone in the courtyard. Many turned to see who suddenly shouted. They were surprised that it was the always happy and enthusiastic Enid. Wednesday stood still with a blank expression. That's the normal attitude. Well, I saved myself from the stupid tour. Maybe I should ask Luke Poe, thought Wednesday, as she began to walk calmly toward her new dorm. In the dark depths of the forest outside Jericho, in a cave hidden in the undergrowth, a sinister act is taking place. The air inside the cave is damp and cold, and the sound of dripping water droplets echoes in the darkness. The floor is covered with a layer of slimy moss. The only light source comes from a single torch. In the heart of the cave, a young boy lies imprisoned by rusty chains. The boy seems to be conscious, but at the same time, he is not. His gaze is empty. In front of the boy stands a woman staring at him. The woman has fair skin, long brown hair, and brown eyes. Nevermore students would recognize her immediately. It was the kindly professor of botany, Marilyn Thornhill. However, the professor did not have the usual friendly look and smile. She had a twisted smile on her lips and a cold, hateful look directed at Tyler. She hated outcasts. Finally, that damned Adams girl is at Nevermore. The prophecy didn't fail. With a few more days of torture, Hyde's brainwashing will be complete, and I'll put the plan into action, thought Marilyn with a ghoulish grin. Tyler, honey, wake up, said Marilyn, approaching the young man and squatting down. Mother, my head hurts, Tyler mumbled with narrowed eyes. I know, honey. Take this. It will make you better, Marilyn said in a kind tone, passing a glass with a greenish-colored liquid to Tyler. She brought the glass closer to Tyler, who hesitated for a second. No fear, son, Marilyn said in a loving tone. Tyler decided to drink it with Marilyn's help. He drank it all down. After a few seconds, Tyler began to scream in pain. Marilyn patted his shoulders as if that would do any good. There. Take it easy. You have to be strong to help Mom, Marilyn said with a slight smile. Yeah, grunted Tyler, gritting his teeth and enduring the pain. After that, he lost consciousness. That was easier than I thought. What a weak-minded teenager, thought Marilyn, glaring at the unconscious Tyler. She put away the drug she was using to brainwash Tyler and heal him a bit, as she had to send him back home. Before I get Wednesday Addams' blood, I need outcast body parts or normies. I'll use this hide for that, thought Marilyn with a slight smile. It was time to start a killing spree in Jericho. If it were up to her, she would use outcasts, but she didn't mind assassinating normies, as it was easier. Outcasts might try to defend themselves against a Hyde and rarely leave Nevermore, since it was a boarding school. It would be great to assassinate that arrogant boy, thought Marilyn. The smile on her face disappeared, and there was only hatred in her eyes. An image of Luke Poe came into her head. This outcast always made fun of her and showed no interest whatsoever in her classes. She hated him since last year. Echo, Luke sneezed. Luckily, he managed to cover it with his arm. Otherwise, he would have soiled the girl just inches away from him. Are you okay? Asked a beautiful blonde girl with green eyes. The girl was completely naked, as was Luke, who wiped his nose with a handkerchief that came floating towards him. Someone must be talking bad about me, commented Luke, blowing his nose. It was Saturday night. Xavier was not in the dorm as he had gone to Bianca's dorm. So Luke had the bedroom all to himself. Ever since he experienced his first time with a normie named Emily, Luke wanted to continue to have an active sex life as much as possible. With his fame as a writer and his last name in the world of outcasts, it's not hard to find a girl who wants to sleep with him. So here he is with a beautiful blonde student 2 years his senior. Her name was Kat. He only remembered it thanks to his photographic memory, as he didn't care much for it. Kat had an hourglass figure, beautiful eyes, and most of all 2 big melons that were more striking than her green eyes. "Hey, don't stop. I was just climaxing," Kat said, watching as Luke wiped his nose. "Sorry. Let me make it up to you," said Luke, returning to the action. A while later, the carnal act was over. "It's already 2 in the morning," thought Luke, looking at the time on his cell phone. "You better get back to your dorm," commented Luke, looking at Kat, who was hugging him and resting her head on his chest. He didn't know why women liked to do this after sex. "I don't want to," said Kat, hugging Luke tighter, who frowned. He didn't want Kat to come out of his bedroom tomorrow and for everyone to see her. Security in the men's dormitories was weak. The professors hardly patrolled at all. A girl coming out of a dorm was not uncommon to see among the students. After all, Nevermore is a boarding school full of teenagers. "I'm not giving you a choice," Luke said stubbornly. "That's too bad. A pretty girl wants to sleep with you, and you're kicking her out." "The rumors of Luke Poe's bad temper are true," said Kat with a slight smile and starting to kiss Luke. "I don't have a bad temper," thought Luke, reluctantly accepting Kat's kisses. "Didn't you want to watch a movie?" "Now's a good time," said Kat, seeing that Luke wanted to kick her out. "Oh, that's right. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 74. A classic," said Luke with renewed interest. Luckily, in this world, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a movie that was released just like in his previous world. He had seen this movie many times before, but it was nice to watch it and discuss the movie with someone else. He put the movie on the huge TV in the bedroom, and they began to watch it. 30 minutes later, Kat had fallen asleep on Luke's chest. This girl lasted 10 minutes longer than the last one, thought Luke, slightly disappointed. With the remote, he turned off the TV and went to sleep. He wouldn't wake Kat up to kick her out. He wasn't that bastard. He remembered the times when they had movie marathons with Enid. Neither would fall asleep, and they would enthusiastically watch the movies while eating popcorn and cuddling together. There was no sex. Luke didn't dare try for fear that his relationship with Enid would become awkward, but he preferred those nights with Enid 1,000 times more than the ones he had with Kat or another girl these days. The next day at about 11 noon, the bedroom door opened. It was Xavier. "Today's a different girl," thought Xavier, looking at Luke's bed. The latter was sleeping next to a beautiful blonde who was hugging him and drooling a little. If he's happy, thought Xavier, sighing internally. Since Nevermore started, it had only been 2 weekends. Luke had already brought 3 different girls, a change he noticed from his friend compared to last year. Luke slowly opened his eyes and saw Xavier. They both stared at each other. "This is an illusion. You'll wake up soon," Luke said, making a circular motion with his hands. "Like I'm going to believe that, you idiot," Xavier said with a slight smile. "TSCH," Luke clicked his tongue. "Just use protection. I don't want you to get syphilis or something," Xavier said in a mocking tone. "Shut up. You're not my father," Luke said, getting up. Luckily, he was wearing shorts that he put on before putting on the movie. "Hey, wake up. It's late already," exclaimed Luke, tactlessly shaking Kat's shoulder. I'm coming," muttered Kat sleeplessly. She rose slightly from the bed, exposing her chest. She was still naked. Luke quickly, with his telekinesis, used the sheets to create a wall so Xavier wouldn't see her. He didn't want his friend to get in trouble with his toxic girlfriend, Bianca. "What a gentleman." "Thanks," Kat said with a cute smile as she noticed Luke's gesture. "Just change and get out," thought Luke, but he didn't say anything. He tried to control his bad temper. "I had a great time last night. Call me later." "Bye," said Kat, already dressed, kissing Luke goodbye, who nodded slightly and said nothing. "Bye," said Kat, waving to Xavier, who raised his hand somewhat shyly. The girl opened the door and left the room. After a few seconds, Xavier looked at Luke and quickly approached. "You bastard, that's one of the most beautiful girls in the senior class. How did you get her to sleep with you?" asked Xavier, grabbing Luke by the shoulders and shaking him. For a senior cutie to sleep with a boy 2 years younger than her was a very rare thing to see, or almost unheard of to see. "What? Really?" asked Luke, letting Xavier shake him. It was a good way to wake up quickly, if a little rude. "TSCH, you damn famous and handsome writer," Xavier said with envy, albeit the good kind. His family of psychics had a pole-like prominence, maybe 1 or 2 rungs below in terms of seniority in Golden Peak, but now his family was much more than the Poes, who counted only 1 living member. The only difference between him and Luke was his appearance. Although Xavier was confident in his appearance and was always popular, he could not be bought with Luke's looks. Second, and very important, was Luke's success as a writer. Carrie had hundreds of thousands of sales, and his second novel seemed to follow the same path of success. Luke had social networks with hundreds of thousands of followers. His fame is the biggest in Nevermore. "Don't bother. You have a girlfriend," Luke said, escaping Xavier's grip and starting to get dressed. He was hungry. "Yeah, for now," said Xavier. His relationship with Bianca wasn't getting better. It was only getting worse. "Anyway, Catabagnale, leaving your dorm will be a rumor that will soon start spreading all over Nevermore. Be prepared," added Xavier with a hand on his chin. "Do you know her last name?" asked Luke, who didn't know Kat's last name since he hadn't asked her. "Yeah, she's one of the hottest girls in Nevermore. All the guys know it." "Don't tell Bianca," Xavier said. "Maybe they'll think she was with you," Luke commented with a smile. "Impossible. By leaving at this hour, it will prove that she was in your dorm all night." "They all saw me coming out of the dorms heading to Bianca's," said Xavier, shaking his head. "You do take it seriously," Luke thought. He didn't want that rumor to spread, but there was nothing he could do about it now. He could only pray that no one had seen Kat come out of his bedroom. "Let's go eat," Luke said without giving this any more thought. Monday arrived. Today would be the day for 10th graders to practice sparring. Luke hadn't spoken to Wednesday since they were in the same group. He wasn't nervous. The goth girl was supposed to take care of everything. She said so herself, and knowing her excellence in just about everything, it was quite possible she would take on 2 psychics by herself. Luke recalled, thanks to his photographic memory, that Wednesday had perfect grades and was a genius in multiple disciplines. Archery, better than him. Fencing, better than him. Engineering, etc. Of course, she is better than Luke without using auras, since with his clairvoyance aura, Luke can be untouchable in fencing or archery. With his telekinesis, he can direct the arrows and have them always hit the target. Where did she get so much time to be an expert in so many things? Thought Luke, heading to the cafeteria along with Xavier and Ajax. Luke had good grades in school thanks to his photographic memory and the fact that he was a person who was reincarnated. He is a successful writer because he copies the works of Stephen King, who is not in this world. "Well, I have 3 auras, and according to Edgar, I'm a genius in battle," thought Luke, encouraging himself. His real specialty is his combat power. He trained like crazy and defeated 4 people who wanted to kill them without anyone's help. In that, he knew he wouldn't lose to Wednesday. According to his judgment, his strength was superior to all Nevermore students, even the older students. As he entered the cafeteria, which was filled with students, he noticed the gaze of many people on him. It was not the first time he felt this way. He was used to it, but today was different. There were more stares and murmurs than usual. "Here we go," muttered Xavier, and Ajax smiled slightly. They were somewhat used to the stares their friend got, but it was still a little uncomfortable being watched by almost every student. "More stares today than usual," Luke said as he grabbed his breakfast and sat down at a free table. "It's because of the other day," commented Xavier, sitting down. "And what thing?" asked Luke, adding a lot of sugar to his coffee. "Have you forgotten already?" asked Ajax in disbelief. "Cat a Bagnale. The rumor that you 2 slept together is already known to everyone." "Congratulations," replied Xavier with a smirk. "What? That fast?" asked Luke. It had only been a day. "I was also surprised that the rumor was flying so fast." "Ajax shows it to him," said Xavier with an amused smile. "Look at this," said Ajax, showing Luke his cell phone screen. Both boys looked at Luke silently, who was looking at the picture on the cell phone. "At what point did that bitch take this photo?" thought Luke abruptly, grabbing Ajax's cell phone and taking a closer look at the photo. The photo was of him and Kat. He was sleeping peacefully, while Kat was taking a selfie very close to his sleeping face as she smiled. You could tell they were both lying on a bed, and Luke had no shirt on. Kat didn't either, so she was covering herself with the sheets. Thanks to the spread of this photo, the rumor became a reality and flew faster than ever, Xavier said with a slight smile, seeing Luke's shocked expression. In recent times, it was rare to see his friend with that expression. I shouldn't have let her sleep with me, thought Luke, squeezing the cell phone hard. Since when do girls take half-naked pictures with a guy and spread them around? It's usually the other way around. Hey, you'll break it, said Ajax, yanking the cell phone out of Luke's hands. Luke paid no attention to Ajax's complaints and, with his eyes, looked for the table where Enid was for some reason. He quickly found her. It wasn't hard to find the striking blonde hair with blue and pink highlights on the ends. Enid looked at it too, though only for a second. Her expression was not as enthusiastic and happy as it usually is. Luke could notice Yoko and Divina's furious glares at him. Why did I look at her? Luke thought, averting his gaze. His mood dropped as he saw Enid's expression. He cared little for the opinions of others, but with Enid, it was different. When he broke up with Enid, he saw her crying, which made him feel guilt and pain. Perhaps he had grown fonder of her than he had expected. Spending so many months together and sharing things caused him to have an emotional bond that in neither of his two lives did he ever have. He didn't think it would be so weak and affect him so much. That may be one reason why he looks for different girls and forgets about her. Although Luke doesn't want to admit that he's still paying so much attention to her after they broke up months ago. After breakfast came the first class, which was psychic powers. Finally came the day the psychic students had been waiting for. Actual combat against their peers using their powers. Last year, it was all about learning about auras, ways to use your powers, etc. There was no serious combat. To everyone's surprise, the practice fight would take place on Raven Island. Luke didn't think he would be visiting the island where he killed the werewolf. The school paid more attention to Luke's class practice. In addition to Professor Charles, they were joined by two other professors. The fencing professor, Vlad, and Professor Fitz. Professor Fitz was a psychic. He was of average height, had tan skin, and had dark sunglasses covering his eyes. He appeared to be on summer vacation, even though it was autumn. The trip to Raven Island was not in canoes like the Poe Cup. They got on a motorboat that fit about 15 people without a problem. It was much more comfortable than a canoe trip. "How's the morning going, teammate?" asked Luke, sitting down next to Wednesday, who was looking out at the river with a blank expression. Luke looked at Wednesday's outfit. Since today was a training day, no one was wearing the normal uniform. They were all wearing their gym uniforms, which were sports jackets with comfortable, stretchy t-shirts underneath. On the bottom are sports pants. As expected, Wednesday wore the all-black sports uniform with white lines. The normal one was indigo. Wednesday turned her head slowly and looked at Luke. Luckily, Luke did not invade her personal space. He sat at a medium distance, so she didn't have to turn away with a disgruntled look, as she almost always did. "Normal. I wish the sky was more cloudy and dark," Wednesday replied, going back to looking at the river. That's a better answer than I expected, Luke thought. He had thought Wednesday would either ignore him completely or tell him to stay out of the way. "Are you used to Nevermore yet?" asked Luke. He knew the answer to this question, but still, he asked it. "Irritating. This school is more normie than I thought. I only come here out of obligation to my parents," Wednesday replied. Unlike the outcasts who had attended Nevermore for years, she had been educated in normie schools. She thought her peers, outcast teenagers, would act differently, but that was not the case. They still had the same interests as normies: popularity, sex, gossip, and stupid things that made her irritated. The only difference was that the teenagers here had special abilities, and there were specifics. "Is it your irritated face?" thought Luke. Wednesday's expression was the same as always. The changes in her face were barely visible since she arrived at Nevermore. For example, when Luke gets up in the mornings and is in a bad mood, he has a scowl and a grim look on his face. Although that's usually the norm for him, but more visible. I feel the same way. I went to normie schools, And the only difference is that there are people here who can murder normies easily, Luke commented. Luke at first did not want to come to Nevermore, just like Wednesday. However, his reason was different. He hated schools in general. He didn't care if it was for normies or outcasts. However, he now thought Nevermore was much better than a normie school. Its facilities, food, and subjects specific to the outcast world were better than normie subjects. Even the people. Luke, at the end of it all, felt more in tune with the outcast world than with the normies. If he had murdered a person in normie society, he would have gone to jail and been treated like a psychopath, but here that wasn't the case. But I ended up concluding that Nevermore is better than the normie schools, Luke added. I don't agree with that, said Wednesday, disappointed by Luke's comment. In the end, it's just like everyone else, thought Wednesday. Well, people don't always have the same opinions, said Luke, making a lazy gesture with his hand. He knew Wednesday hated Nevermore because her mother had been the model and most popular student of her day, and she didn't want to follow in her footsteps. Why did you end up concluding that Nevermore is better? Asked Wednesday after a few minutes of silence. Because you can murder people as long as it's in self-defense. Luke replied in a calm tone, as if what he was saying was the most natural thing in the world. Although in the normie society, the concept of self-defense also existed, it was much more rigorous than in the marginal society. Many irritating procedures had to be followed once he had killed a person who wanted to kill him. In normal society, Luke would have gone to a trial to determine whether he acted justifiably and under many more problematic procedures. In an outcast society, however, he didn't have to go through all that trouble. Even an outcast police officer complimented him. The rules were different. Wednesday opened her mouth slightly in surprise at Luke's response. She thought he would tell her, because of his friendship with people similar to you, or something stupid cliché. She didn't think he would say, because murder is easier with the outcast rules. She knew firsthand that was the case. At her previous school, Normie almost murdered a gang of girls who picked on her. She put up with their jokes as long as she could, but they wouldn't stop. So, she had no choice but to act. Using the electrical wiring from one of the poles on the school campus, she electrocuted them with a simple trap. Unfortunately, people arrived to save the girls, and someone had seen her set the trap. She was indicted on multiple murder charges and expelled from school immediately. Despite the evidence, she had of the girls abusing many students. Because of her family's power, nothing happened to her, but she knew that the procedure was very rigorous. Her father had to pull a lot of strings and bribe people. This would not have happened in the society of the outcasts. The law is an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. We are here. Come down in order, shouted Professor Charles. Luke stood up without noticing the change in Wednesday's expression toward him. However, to notice it, you had to watch her very carefully, as the girl was an expert at keeping her expression the same most of the time. Maybe we have more in common than I thought Wednesday, following Luke and looking at his back. Her earlier feeling of disappointment about Luke was gone. No other outcast would have given that answer. She knew that. Although they accepted death more naturally because of their rules, not everyone would talk about murdering people like it was common. Listen up, everyone. The fights will be simple. One team will be the attacker, and one will be the defender. The attacking team must steal the flag from the defenders. Once stolen, they must leave the marked perimeter, and it will be their victory. The defending team must defeat the attackers or hold on for 30 minutes. The areas are already designated, explained Charles. The only thing that is not allowed is deadly attacks. We have Professor Fitz, who will heal you. So, don't be afraid to fight and hurt each other, he added. Whoa, they really take this tournament seriously, thought Luke, listening to all the professor's explanations. They even planted cameras all over Raven Island, so that the spectators could see each group's match perfectly. They drew lots to see which groups would face each other. There were 6 groups in total. Luke's group was number 6, and they were to face group number 2. Group number 2 consisted of a girl of Japanese origin named Naotamori. She was one of the new students this year and was a transfer. Luke suspected that this girl belonged to the Spellmans and wanted to assassinate him, like Sabrina, but he couldn't know unless he sneak attacked her and read her memories. The odds of her belonging to the Spellmans are low, as she is Japanese. It would be difficult to create such a real identity. Now his companion was Rowan Loslow, a boy with brown eyes and short brown hair. The person who tried to assassinate Wednesday in the series to stop the supposed prophecy that Wednesday would destroy Nevermore. Rowan is a scary bundle of nerves, introverted, and an outcast among his peers. Luke finds it hard to think that this coward could be encouraged to try to assassinate Wednesday. Last year, at the beginning, Rowan showed advanced psychic abilities compared to the others, not counting Luke and Sabrina. Along with Luke, Sabrina, and Xavier, Rowan was in the top 4 best psychic students. Luke, if he had to do a top from last year, would position Rowan in the top 3. In the top 1 would be him, followed by Sabrina, and then Rowan. However, Rowan did not make much progress compared to the other students. Luke sees Xavier's current abilities and believes that in a battle Xavier would defeat Rowan. The sky blue aura is more powerful than it first appeared. Xavier can now draw in the air itself. He only needs a brush, and his speed is much faster than last year. With this again, he realized that the series he saw in his past life of this world was unreal. That world was similar, but very weak compared to the one he is living in. The first group was Xavier with his friend Mike. They seemed to be childhood friends, although they were not as close as they used to be. Mike possessed an orange aura. Luke saw how in classes he could manipulate the earth. They were up against a girl with a white aura and a tall boy who possessed telekinesis. The professors took each group to their assigned area. Xavier's group was to defend. That too was decided by luck. This favored Xavier and Mike. Their skills were better at defending. Luke and the others watched both groups through several screens broadcasting in real time. It was a rare sight that in a forest there were connected screens with many wires. The combat began. The attackers began to head to where Xavier and Mike were with the object to defend. The distance was not long, nor short. If they ran at a moderate speed, they would arrive in 15 minutes. They're slow. At my speed, I'd be there in 5 minutes, Wednesday muttered to herself, making plans in her head to finish the fight as quickly as possible if she was on the attacker's side. In 15 minutes, they arrived at the area where Xavier and Mike were already in position. In the time, they set up what defenses and traps they could. The two psychics did not go on the attack. They watched the circling landscape, moving carefully and trying to find their opponents who had hidden using the forest to their advantage. At this rate, they will fall into the traps, Luke said mentally. Next to him was a ghost floating with a cup in his hand. It was Edgar who was watching the battle curiously. I doubt it. Look at the girl. She's using clairvoyance to create a mental map of the area. That way, she'll know where the traps were set, Edgar commented, realizing what the girl was doing. With his years of experience and being a clairvoyant, he could figure this out with a simple glance. That's right. I didn't notice, thought Luke, noticing that the girl had her eyes wide open as she scanned the surrounding area. Her eyes had a white glow to them that Luke had not noticed before. Clairvoyance had several uses. Luke usually focused on improving his observation hockey, as he called it, which served more for combat. Usually, clairvoyants don't focus on that. They use clairvoyance to get information about a certain object, person, or location, or for power reading, to know about the auras of their opponents, or to know if they are a different type of outcast. The latter worried Luke, as his clairvoyant classmate could see that Luke had 3 auras. However, the Eye of Truth is a difficult ability and is visible at the initial level. That is, Luke could see the girl with a third strange eye staring at him. What relieved him the most was the technique Edgar taught him to hide his auras. In this way, clairvoyants would not be able to see that he possessed 3 auras. Luke would not hide all 3 auras. He only leaves the yellow aura visible. This technique involves conscious control over one's psychic energy, altering its vibration to make it less noticeable to the eyes of other clairvoyants. However, it is not foolproof. A more powerful clairvoyant than him could realize the trickery, and if he controls the Eye of Truth very well, he could discover his 3 auras. Luke wanted to keep it hidden that he was a 3-aura user for obvious reasons. Already being a 2-aura user was super rare. Elite psychic families would jump in a paw if they had a member in their family with 2 auras. According to Edgar, if in a prominent family of psychics, There is a succession fight between 3 siblings. If one of the siblings has 2 auras, he would automatically win the fight no matter how young he is. That is one of the many examples of the advantages you would have by possessing a double aura. Now imagine having 3 auras. It would only put him in the eye of the hurricane. It could cause the Spellmans to send their strongest members to assassinate him, as he would become a major threat by possessing 3 auras. While Luke was thinking about these things, the combat had already begun. Thanks to the clairvoyant girl, they were able to dodge the traps set by Xavier and Mike. In addition, they knew where they were hiding, so the telekinetic began an attack. His level was at the top of level 2. The trees were very heavy, but instead, he used 3 branches that weighed a little over 150 kilograms. Mike used an earth dome to defend against 2 branches. His reaction was fast and accurate. As for Xavier, he managed to dodge the branch thanks to his agility and physical prowess. Although psychics had weaker bodies than a werewolf or a vampires, they still had superior bodies to normies. More strength, more speed, endurance, etc. Nevermore and Outcasts in general placed great importance on physical and martial arts development. For some reason, they learned fencing and archery among other clubs dedicated to combat. As a viewer, Luke was so hooked on the battle that he could see it on the highest quality screens. It looked like a superhero movie. An adult army-trained normie wouldn't last 5 minutes against the psychic students who were only 15 years old. Not only did they have powers that defied logic, but their physical abilities were incredible. They looked like trained soldiers with superhuman abilities. And I already see this as normal, thought Luke with a strange look on his face. Finally, time ran out, and the attacking team couldn't take the flag. Xavier's team won by defending the base. Team 1 moved on to the next round, and Team 3 was eliminated. Professor Fitz went to heal the students, who had bruises, scrapes, and the occasional broken bone, in addition to fatigue. Luke got his first glimpse of advanced healing from a green or a psychic. He had seen Veronica, but this one was not an expert like Professor Fitz. The professor needed only a few minutes to heal everyone and make them as good as new. I hope Sabrina's bitch didn't get her eye back, Luke thought. Seeing the crazy regeneration abilities that were in this world, it wasn't crazy that Sabrina, with her family connections, could get her eye regenerated. As the other 2 professors were getting the area in condition for the next battle, Professor Charles slyly called Luke over, and they stepped away from the group to talk privately. "What do you need, Professor?" asked Luke, curious about the sudden chatter. "I just wanted a request of you," said Charles, scratching what little beard he had. "A professor needs to ask a request of a student?" thought Luke quizzically. "Go ahead," said Luke. "Last year in your battle on Raven Island, you used a lot of roots to fight. If possible, don't use them, please," asked the professor with a strange expression. It was weird to ask a student to limit himself. Otherwise, he could easily defeat his classmates and leave the island in a bad condition, since all the tree roots can't return to the ground just like that. "I understand. I won't use my telekinesis on the roots," Luke said, readily agreeing to the professor's request. He wasn't planning on fighting anyway. Wednesday would take care of that. "Oh, thanks," said Charles, a little surprised. He thought Luke would complain more, since he doesn't seem like the kind of student who would show mercy even to his classmates. "Let's head back. The professor should be about done tidying up the place by now," he added, as he started walking. "What is that?" thought Luke, sensing a strange presence hidden not far from where they had the conversation. He did not recognize the presence. He decided to do nothing and follow the professor. How would he explain that he sensed a hidden enemy even the professor couldn't notice? Only a clairvoyance user who can see others even if they are hidden from view and far away could notice such a presence. When they arrived with everyone else, they drew lots for the roles that each group would fulfill. Group 6, Luke and Wednesday, was assigned the role of defenders. Group 2, Rowan and Now, were to attack. Each group was taken to their designated area by a professor, while the others watched the screens. Unlike the previous bout, there was not much excitement about this match. "Rowan and Now are unlucky," commented a boy with a strange hairstyle. "Bad luck that they were matched against that monster and a very strong-looking Adams." Just seeing her expressionless face gives you the creeps, commented the lanky guy who had lost to Xavier and Mike. Luckily, we won't be facing him, muttered a boy with fluffy black hair and brown eyes. He was shorter in stature and wore black glasses. Don't be a coward, Eugene. That way, we won't win the tournament, said a girl with pink hair and an athletic build. Her name was Rose, and she planned to win the tournament. Wait for the flare. Once you see it, you can start moving and set traps if you wish, said the professor as he left Wednesday and Luke in a part of the forest. In the center was a bluish-violet flag. Why do they like the color indigo so much? Asked Luke, sitting down on a log as he looked at the flag. Indigo was Nevermore's favorite color. That's what he asked me all the time, said Wednesday, cleaning a log and sitting down while looking ahead. She looks like a doll, thought Luke watching Wednesday. The girl was relatively short compared to the other girls at Nevermore, and also quite thin. Professor Charles limited you to using your telekinesis, didn't he? Asked Wednesday after a few seconds of silence. She was there, thought Luke, raising an eyebrow in surprise. He didn't think the presence he barely managed to detect was Wednesday eavesdropping on their conversation. Thanks to his keeping his sensor active at all times, he was able to notice her, otherwise he wouldn't have noticed her. Also, her presence was very different from normal, so he didn't recognize her. Did you spy? Asked Luke. With this, he already knew that this was not a possible assassin sent by the Spellmans. I wouldn't call it that. Just watch what the professor said to my groupmate. I don't want to be harmed, Wednesday said in a monotone. She took every activity very seriously. She was perfect and very competitive. Whatever you say. Yeah, what you heard is right. Anyway, I won't move. You'll take care of everything, Luke said with a slight smile as he took a relaxed stance. So he can indeed move roots with his telekinesis, thought Wednesday in amazement, though she didn't show it on her face. To move roots that affect the landscape, you had to have telekinesis level 3 minimally. Depending on the roots he moved, he might already be at level 4. Not only that, most difficult of all was for the telekinetic to move objects that he could not see with his sight. Only advanced telekinetics achieve such a feat. For a 15-year-old to accomplish, it would be considered a genius who has an instinct. What Wednesday didn't know is that Luke could accomplish such a feat because, thanks to his clairvoyance, he could see the roots. Wednesday's opinion of Luke rose again. Although she wouldn't show it, she respected him more, as she too is a genius. The same was true for Luke. His opinion of Wednesday went up. He knew the black aura allowed for better stealth, but he didn't think Wednesday would have it so advanced. The professor was unaware that their conversation was eavesdropped on. On the other hand, when Luke returned with the others, he noticed Wednesday in the same place as before. At what point did she move to spy on them and return before them? It didn't even look like she had moved. She was still as a statue. For that reason, Luke dismissed Wednesday as the person who spied on him. He didn't think her stealth and speed would be that good. He figured it out since clairvoyance is the counter to stealth. Just then they could see a red flare being fired. The combat had begun. You're going up against a telekinetic and an elemental. Are you still going to do it alone? Asked Luke as he yawned. Yes. Just sit tight. Your role will be a distractor so they don't take the flag, replied Wednesday, standing up. Luke said nothing and obeyed. His presence would be enough for the attackers not to try to take the flag quickly. Wednesday stood up and walked over to a large tree that had a large shadow. In a matter of seconds, she disappeared into the shadows. That ability is good, thought Luke, a little jealous. If he didn't have the white aura that allowed him to see people who were hidden or couldn't be seen naturally, he'd be screwed in a fight against Wednesday. Luke was curious about Wednesday's battle power in this world. He remembered that, in the series, Rowan beat her easily using immobilization. Thanks to Hyde's attack, she managed to save herself. However, the Wednesday of this world seemed very powerful and much less merciful. Luke expanded his domain. In this way, he called upon the extrasensory ability that allowed him to see the presence of any individual no matter how much they were hidden from view or too far away to see naturally. As his radius gradually increased, Luke saw an imaginary sphere gaining ground. By the time that terrain entered the sphere, Luke could see if there were any living creatures there or not. 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, 5 kilometers, 7 kilometers. The radius continued to expand until it reached 10 kilometers. Instantly, he could see now first who was running at an incredible speed and Rowan, who had fallen behind. The distance was about 10 kilometers, so Luke from the start could see where his enemies were. Electrokinesis, Luke thought to himself in jealousy. He had always wished he could control electricity and use it to crush enemies. A very flashy and cool power. Now powered his movement with electricity, reaching a much faster speed than average. Everyone took about 15 minutes to get here. She took only 5. 10 kilometers covered in 5 minutes. A normie wouldn't believe this. He'd tell you you're crazy. An elite normie runner can run 10 kilometers in about 30 to 35 minutes. Yet here outcast teenagers are doing it between 15 to 5 minutes. Their teamwork sucks, Luke thought. The Japanese girl had left her partner behind and had come here alone. Luke wasn't one to talk about teamwork, though. I don't see the goth girl, said the Japanese girl with a confident smile. Her English was good. Who cares? I'll take the flag before she can do anything. Now thought as the lightning wrapped around her and she shot off in the direction of the flag. As for Luke's presence near the flag, now didn't care. She was confident in her speed and knew her opponent was a telekinetic. He wouldn't be able to react, or so she thought. Luke, with his domain, could easily immobilize the girl with his telekinesis or move a branch at a speed exceeding Now's speed, but Luke wouldn't do this. He stood watching as a blur came faster and faster towards him. It had already entered the area where they were supposed to set traps. When Now was about 5 meters from the flag, black pinpricks emerged from one of the shadows made by the tall trees. The spikes almost went right through her. Now had to back up, or else she would have been seriously injured. Your speed is great, though your brains are not so much, Wednesday said, showing her presence. She looked at the Japanese girl as if she was an arrogant idiot. Oh, there we go with the rude comments, Now said, unaffected by Wednesday's comment. I'll toast you a bit and then take the flag, she added with a smile, as sparks flew from her fists. However, Now felt her body being frozen. She could no longer move, no matter how much force she wanted to exert. Her electricity wasn't working either. At what point did this happen? What Now hadn't noticed was that the shadow of a tree behind her had extended and had come into contact with her shadow. Oh, that technique reminds me of Naruto, thought Luke, who had watched as the tree's shadow extended to Now. The only thing different was that Naruto's character was doing it from his own shadow. Now as hard as a rock. She couldn't even speak. From her shadow, hands of complete darkness began to appear and began to bind her. Her whole body was bound like a mummy. There was only a small hole in her nose that allowed her to breathe. A good power in the body of an idiot, commented Wednesday. I guess teaching in Japan is lax, commented Luke with a slight smile. He hid his surprise at how easily Wednesday defeated Now. Or all teenagers are stupid and arrogant, said Wednesday, with a barely visible grimace on her hegemonic face. Luckily, Now's ears were covered by shadows, and she couldn't hear Luke and Wednesday's insults towards her in her homeland. You're a teenager too, said Luke with a strange look on his face. I'm different. I'm not an idiot, and I don't blindly trust my powers, Wednesday said with contempt toward Now. Although she was arrogant and considered herself a genius, she took everything seriously and wouldn't underestimate her opponents or go easy on them. What about me? I'm different, asked Luke with a slight smile. He wondered if he fell into the categorization of different or stupid and arrogant. Maybe, muttered Wednesday in a tone Luke didn't hear. Just then footsteps and a shaky voice were heard. No, I'm late, said Rowan with sweat and leaves on his uniform. Wednesday stopped talking to Luke and looked at his enemy. She had to defeat him quickly and in this match. Rowan was sweaty and short of breath. He had run as fast as he could to try to keep up with his teammate, but to no avail. He was now at a 2 versus 1 and fatigued from running so fast. What do I do? Wondered Rowan nervously as he looked at Luke and Wednesday. He noticed a mummy with black clothes, most likely his teammate. Wednesday, with her indifferent face, began to walk slowly towards Rowan, who focused his attention on the pale girl. If I defeat her, The darkness will disappear, and now will be released, thought Rowan, starting to act. Using his hands and vision as a focus, he lifted a large number of objects from the ground. Stones of different sizes, branches, etc. Level 2, Luke thought, slightly disappointed. If Rowan was at level 3, he could move an entire tree. Unlike the trees in the Jericho Forest, the trees on Raven Island are less heavy. About 250 to 300 kilograms is the lightest. From 1 second to the next, all the objects shot toward Wednesday, who stopped her march and moved her hands in a circular motion. The singular thing was that her hands had a dark energy. A black shield covered Wednesday from the projectiles launched by Rowan. No projectile was able to pass through the shield. Many objects passed through Wednesday and headed to where Luke was. As the projectiles were about to hit Luke and the flag, they suddenly stopped. The projectiles hovered in the air and, a second later, fell to the ground. Even his control of many objects is bad, thought Luke, who had stopped Rowan's projectiles with just his eyes and without any effort. If Rowan had had better control, he could have sent all the objects to a particular point on Wednesday's shield. Maybe that way, he could have broken it, but many of the objects were deflected and not aimed at Wednesday. Holy crap, thought Rowan as he saw the unpolluted dark shield. He didn't even notice that Luke stopped the objects without any difficulty. Otherwise, his fighting spirit would be all over the floor. The black shield vanished. The alarming thing for Rowan was that Wednesday had disappeared. Luke had watched as she vanished in an instant through the shadows. Wednesday materialized behind Rowan. She emerged from her shadow, and before he could react, she delivered a sharp blow to the back of his head, knocking him unconscious. She travels in the shadows. That's how she managed to spy on us and get back so fast, thought Luke, again jealous of this incredible ability. It was like teleporting, though still not as broken. That girl is good. It was to be expected from an Adams, said Edgar in admiration of Wednesday. He watched the whole fight. The pale girl's moves were flawless and perfectly executed. She defeated 2 psychics her age in a matter of minutes. Even though she didn't take them on in a 2 versus 1, it was still a difficult feat for psychics of that age, except for Luke. Yeah, muttered Luke. He hadn't expected Wednesday to have such high strength compared to Rowan. She beat him in a few breaths. In the series, she had been defeated easily, but here it was the other way around. Her scary attitude I like. Make her your girlfriend. I'm sure she's better compared to the girls you sleep with, Edgar commented. A girl with a peculiar personality, a black aura, and also belonging to the great Adams family. It's a great match for his offspring. Most important of all, her talent is very high, just like Luke. What the hell are you talking about? Asked Luke with a grimace. To Luke's chagrin, he couldn't hide the necklace outside his room. So Edgar could have come out at a time when he was with one of the girls he slept with this last time. As for having Wednesday as a girlfriend, it seemed impossible to him. Who the hell would have the patience to woo this girl? As for the series of Wednesday he saw in his past life, Tyler the Hyde, he managed to win Wednesday over to some extent and kiss her. However, Luke no longer believed in that series in this world. There were many differences. For one thing, it was already a miracle that Wednesday would notice a normie guy like Tyler, who gave her roses and made her watch romantic movies. What are you thinking about? Asked Wednesday, approaching Luke, who was still sitting on a log and arguing with the ghost of his great-great-grandfather. Huh, nothing, replied Luke, getting to his feet. Let's go, said Wednesday, starting to walk to where the other students and professors were. We'll leave them here, asked Luke following Wednesday. Let the professors take care of them, replied Wednesday, not caring about the unconscious Rowan and now. The latter no longer had the darkness bindings, but had been knocked unconscious. Perhaps she was afraid of the dark. What a nice classmate, thought Luke, floating Rowan and now. He took them to the professors to be attended to, even though they had almost no injuries. Xavier and the other students watched this fight with their mouths agape. They thought the monster was Luke, but Luke did nothing. The Addams family goth girl flawlessly defeated Rowan and now. Another monster made it to class, thought Xavier with a strange expression on his face. After Luke's fight, although he barely did anything, It was the turn of Eugene Ottinger and Rose Winslow's group versus a boy named Nick and another boy named Arthur. Luke looked at Eugene, a secondary character he saw in the series. He had known him for the past year and had spoken to him a little. The boy was in a club by himself and was a loner. He had so little presence that sometimes he forgot he was his classmate. His aura is blue. In the series, he used a type of telepathy to control the bees, Luke thought, without being very interested in Eugene's ability. Controlling animals by being a telepath isn't hard. If you can command humans, you can also do the same with animals that have less complex brains than a normal human or psychic. This is another branch of mind control, an ability that is not easy to control as a telepath. Luke has already mastered controlling animals or insects. It's not much of a challenge for him. He managed to control the thought of Sabrina, a psychic with 2 auras. Doing it on animals was easier. The hard part would be controlling the animal or insect for a long time to make it do what you want, but it's not hard if you practice enough. Eugene's teammate was a green aura user. She had a fit, athletic build, very different from the average girl. She has muscles in her legs and a shapely back. It wasn't exaggerated to the point of not looking like a woman. The girl was taller than Eugene. Also, she had a better physique, as Eugene had a belly. On the other team, a boy named Nick also possessed a green aura and had a muscular and tall physique. The boy named Arthur possessed a violet aura, very useless in combat like this. So he was allowed to carry his personal weapon, which was a kind of dull wooden spear. Possessing a violet aura does not give you any useful combat skills. So Arthur could be considered the weakest of the lot. However, knowing that he had honed his combat skills and physical condition, green aura, thought Luke enviously. He was very envious today. If he could choose to have another aura, he would choose green. Anyone who knew Luke, a 3-aura user who wanted to have 4, will be banging their head against a wall. Most psychics only have 1 aura. At first, you may think that someone with a green aura will only be a healer who is in the rear. However, this thought is a big mistake. It not only serves to heal people, but it also serves to strengthen yourself. That's the best thing. You can improve your strength, strengthen your bones, and regenerate yourself. Heal yourself in the middle of a battle, and even regenerate from serious injuries if you achieve an advanced level. A base psychic has greater strength than a normie. A psychic with a green aura would be considered a superhuman, unlike the other psychics. There are limitations, but you can become very strong physically with that aura. The combat began. To Eugene's bad luck, he had to attack, which disadvantaged him as his physical condition was not very good. However, his teammate did not let him down like Now did with Rowan. When they reached the flag area, an intense fight broke out between Rose and Nick, 2 green aura users. The physical power of both was monstrous. They wounded and healed themselves without stopping fighting. Arthur faced Eugene, while the other 2 fought. Since he had no useful aura for combat, he had long since improved his martial arts, physically and experience surpassing Eugene, who had a frightened expression as he dodged the attacks. He's weaker than I thought. He still doesn't have the mind control ability of humans, Luke thought, shaking his head. If he had that ability, he could make Arthur stop his attacks with a simple command. I know what you're thinking. Mind control is a tricky skill, and more so in the middle of a battle, said Edgar, noticing Luke's disappointed expression. I managed it in a death match, commented Luke, remembering his battle with Sabrina in the gym. You are a special case. Remember, even Veronica didn't master it like you, said Edgar. That's right, said Luke. Veronica, unlike Eugene, was considered a double-aura genius. As everyone expected, Eugene lost to Arthur. His current abilities were useless in combat, and his physical condition was deplorable. He had no use for telepathy or photographic memory, if he controlled it at all. After that, Arthur helped his teammate defeat Rose, who endured a lot but was defeated in a 2 versus 1. Her strength was similar to Nick's. If anyone else interfered, it would be difficult for her to emerge victorious. Finally came the final round. There were only 3 groups left. Professor Charles explained to them that they would face each other in a pitched battle. The last member, standing, would win. They didn't take much pain with the rules. Each group was taken to an unknown area. This time, no one knew where their enemies were. They had to look for them by their means. There were 3 groups, a total of 6 people. A flare appeared in the sky. It was the signal that they could start moving and search for their enemies. This time, the distance was over 10 kilometers, unlike the first stage. "I'll go that way," Luke said to Wednesday, as he started walking towards a random direction. Wednesday said nothing. She started walking to the opposite side of Luke. She no longer cares what Luke does, as it doesn't affect her. She just has to defeat the 2 groups, and she will win. It doesn't matter if they defeat her teammate. Luke walked casually through the forest. As if he was taking a stroll, he had decided to stretch his muscles a bit. He could put into practice everything he trained over the summer, although he didn't expect his opponents to last long. "I'll just use the yellow aura," Luke thought with a slight smile. Neither hockey, nor mind control, nor any ability from the blue and white auras. "Although it will take longer to find them without using my domain," Luke thought, shaking his head. He began to walk around haphazardly. The area wasn't large either, as the round shouldn't take more than an hour. "Looks like Group 4 already found their prey," commented Professor Fitz, who was looking intently at the screens. On the screen could be seen a considerable distance from Arthur and Nick, who had located Luke, who was walking aimlessly. Nick was carrying a pair of binoculars and was observing the panorama hidden in a bush. "Where did he get binoculars?" asked Now. Since there were many screens, she didn't always pay attention to Nick. "We hide useful objects in random spots," replied Professor Charles. "Useful objects that would be useful for locating enemies, among other things." "Great, get that guy's ass kicked," said Now with a vindictive smile. Although she had nothing against Luke, he was on the team of the goth girl who defeated her in a crushing way and said rude comments to her. Now wanted Wednesday to lose. So, Luke, the goth girl's teammate, was supposed to lose, so he can't help her, and the odds of her losing increase. "You don't know anything," commented Rose, shaking her head with her eyes closed. "What do you mean?" asked Now, offended at being treated like an idiot. "You don't know anything about Luke Poe's reputation?" asked the clairvoyant girl, joining the conversation. "Not much," replied Now. She had heard some things, but not that much. In last year's incident, Luke had been on Raven Island when the hooded attack happened, but she didn't know more than that. She got into Nevermore this year, and she came from overseas. "Watch and learn," said Rose, and looked back to the screen where Luke was walking towards the ambush that Nick and Arthur had set for him. "Don't be quiet after that," exclaimed Now indignantly, but Rose and the clairvoyant girl ignored her. Luke walked calmly, unaware that an ambush was waiting for him a few meters away. As he had deactivated his domain, he only had his normal vision and his ears. In the blink of an eye from a bush nearby, Luke came out a person running towards him at high speed. He held a wooden spear in his hands and was running at full power. In a few breaths, he would collide head-on with Luke. It was Arthur. "H," shouted Arthur as loud as he could. He didn't trust this tactic much, but his friend Nick convinced him. The scream had a purpose. From a bush behind Luke, out came Nick running at top speed. With his green aura, he had enhanced his normal outcast biological capabilities. His speed was much greater than his teammates. However, Luke detected someone behind him. His ears were still that of an outcast. Unless it was a black aura user like Wednesday, he would hear footsteps approaching him no matter how much someone shouted. Nick and Arthur's tactic wasn't all bad. Luke had little time to react. If he decided to use immobilization, he could only use it on the person in front of his eyes. That is, Arthur. So Nick would have a free hand to hit him. However, they did not know that Luke could immobilize both of them, even though Nick was not in his vision. That is if he uses his domain, which allows him to see people who are not in his range of vision. Since Luke only wanted to use his yellow aura, he wouldn't do that. He created a force field around his body to defend against both attacks. A barrier. I knew it, thought Nick with a smile on his face. He had bet that Luke would use a barrier to defend against both attacks. "Take that," shouted Nick, punching with his fist that had veins sticking out of it. He was relying on his superhuman strength to destroy the barrier. Arthur swung his spear at Luke. Nick's fist collided with the force field with a dull sound, followed immediately by Arthur's spear impacting from the front. However, instead of shattering or weakening, the telekinetic shield absorbed both blows with an almost serene calmness. In a simultaneous burst, a shock wave emanated from the shield, expanding with overwhelming force. Nick and Arthur were thrown backward with irresistible force. They flew several meters through the air until they crashed into a tree. The professors and other students watched the fight in disbelief at how easy it was for Luke to defend himself without even moving from his spot. That's a shield that manages to repel its enemies, thought Charles, amazed at the effectiveness of Luke's shield. Damn, why is he so strong? Thought Arthur, getting to his feet. Although they were sent flying several meters, the force wasn't that much. He only felt a little pain in his back. He was still in fighting condition. Before Arthur could think of what to do next, he noticed that Luke had already reached his side. What the hell is that speed? Thought Arthur in shock. Luke's speed was faster than Nick's, a green aura user that enhanced his physical abilities. With the speed coming, Luke closed his fist and punched Arthur's face, breaking his nose in the process and knocking him out. Only one left, thought Luke, feeling a slight pain in his fist. How was he so fast? Just as he could move objects at rapid speed, send people flying, or fly himself, he could use telekinesis to move faster while running, as if the wind itself would help him run faster. Only these are much more powerful telekinetic waves and much harder to control. A telekinetic fighting at close range, thought Nick in disbelief. The professors and other students thought this too. Usually, telekinetics don't fight in close combat. Why would you do that if you can control many objects and crush your opponent from a distance or send him flying like a rag? As for defense, there were several options: immobilization, force field, etc. Using the same method, Luke quickly reached Nick's side and began his attack. He had been trained in martial arts by Natasha. His attacks were aimed at weak areas of the body. His bones are tough, thought Luke, feeling his fist shaking as he hit Nick. If he kept hitting Nick, he would hurt his hands. He might even break the bones in his hand. Wanted to fight hand to hand with me, growled Nick in annoyance as he slammed his fist into Luke. Because of the proximity, Luke would no longer have time to create a barrier. He could easily dodge the blow with his observation hockey, but he didn't plan to use it. To Nick's surprise, the direction of his fist was deflected by an external force. His fist missed, passing just short of Luke's face. Luke took this opportunity and swung his fist at Nick's face again. However, this time, he concentrated and created telekinetic energy bands that wrapped around his arm until they reached his fist. Let's see if you can take this, thought Luke, pushing his fist into Nick's face. A gut-wrenching crunch echoed through the air as Nick's nose snapped and several of his teeth flew in all directions. The force of the blow threw him through the air like a rag doll. Nick's body flew several feet before crashing violently into a tree. Because of the speed at which he was flying and Nick's sturdy body, the trunk splintered and broke. Nick fell to the ground, unconscious, surrounded by the wreckage of the shattered tree. Oh, I thought I had held back long enough, thought Luke, seeing the mess he had made. He approached the unconscious boy and breathed a sigh of relief that he was still alive. The professors and students gawked at what had just happened. They never thought they would see that the punch of a telekinetic would generate such destruction and send their enemy flying. Your technique is very efficient, praised Edgar, looking at Luke as if he was a growing monster. The punch Luke threw was a technique he created himself over the summer. He called it telekinetic helix. Spinning telekinetic energy around his limbs drastically increases the power of his punches. The technique works like a drill. Although he had to rack his brains to find the right way to manipulate telekinetic waves, he stole the idea from an anime he watched in his past life. Its name was Mob Psycho 100. However, he had to do a lot of experiments to succeed, since in the anime, they don't explain the method to achieve such a technique. So, Luke is not ashamed to say that he created this technique. Thanks. It's the first time I've tried it on a human, and it's very effective, said Luke, satisfied to test his technique in a battle. Best of all, he didn't use all his telekinetic forces in that blow. So, the power may be greater. I'll look for Wednesday. She should be taking on Xavier and Mike. I could help her to annoy her a little. Luke thought, expanding his domain. He already tried the technique he wanted. Now, he would annoy Wednesday a little by helping her. He knows the girl hates that and has nothing better to do. Luke was satisfied with the battle. Even though it didn't last long and was easy, he could test his new telekinetic abilities, all focused on making him strong in close combat. He's increasing his speed and strength with telekinetic waves and deflecting attacks by manipulating the trajectory of the blows with telekinesis. Add to that his observation hockey and mind control abilities, and he would be mighty in combat. He no longer just relies on crushing you with an object weighing 1,000 kilograms or more. He knew it was rare for a telekinetic to fight that way, but he didn't care. It was more exciting to fight that way. He could fly, and from that safe place bombard his enemy with objects. But what fun was that? That is, as long as he knew his opponent was at his level or below. If he is facing many opponents or a strong person, he prefers the tactic of flying and using objects to crush his enemies, or if he doesn't feel like fighting and wants to finish the fight faster. Luke finally found the presence of Xavier, Mike, and Wednesday, although the latter was harder to see because of her aura of darkness. They were in combat, and for what he observed, Wednesday had the advantage. Don't beat them yet, thought Luke, starting to run at full speed. With the help of his telekinesis to propel himself quickly, he managed to spot his gothic teammate elbowing Mike in the face and knocking him out. The area where they had fought was not in the best condition. The ground had been tampered with by Mike, a tree was cut in half, and there were several pits. Wednesday's appearance was not perfect, although she was not in a critical situation either. Xavier and Mike's teamwork had made things more difficult for the goth girl compared to their first fight, but she already saw victory close at hand. Only Xavier was left with a cut on his shoulder and fatigue from the fight. Xavier took advantage of the opportunity that his now unconscious companion had created for him. In his hand, he held a whip more than 20 meters long. With all his might, he lashed out at Wednesday, who was far away from him, but his whip covered that distance quickly. Wednesday clicked her tongue internally. This student's damned whip was the hardest thing she faced in this fight. It wasn't a normal whip. Xavier created it from nothingness itself. It was fast and unpredictable, as well as very resistant. She couldn't destroy it no matter how hard she tried to cut it with her powers. Luke had already acted. He telekinetically controlled a tree branch and used it as a shield to cover Wednesday. The whip shattered the branch, but managed the second needed for Wednesday to fade into the shadows and appear behind Xavier, who no longer had time to retract the whip. "Surrender," said Wednesday in a monotone. In her hand, she held an all-black knife pointed at Xavier's neck. "I lose," said Xavier, letting go of the whip and putting both hands up. The sharp knife disappeared, and from some speakers that had been set up by the professors earlier came Charles's voice. "Winner Group 6. Go back and get Mike," said Charles, ending the practice bout. Wednesday looked at Luke. Her expression was not happy at all. "I didn't need your help," said Wednesday, resuming the walk back. Even if the whip had hit her, she had already thought of a tactic for after that. Not as much fun as I expected, Luke thought without argument. He had imagined Wednesday would be more annoyed, but her face was still the same as ever. No expression and no emotion whatsoever. "It's true. You didn't need to help her," Xavier complained, walking towards Luke. If his friend hadn't helped her, he could have defeated Wednesday. Even if he wouldn't have won the fight, since he knew he couldn't beat Luke. "You would have been my teammate," Luke said with a faint smile. "TSCH, grudge," said Xavier. Luke, with his telekinesis, floated Mike, and together with Xavier, they went back to where the professors and students were. Professor Fitz was already healing Arthur and Nick. Nick was in the worst condition. Because of Luke's blow, he lost several teeth, and his nose was broken, in addition to some broken ribs. "You had no mercy," commented Xavier, seeing Nick's condition. Luckily, he ran into Wednesday first before Luke. "It's a new technique. I don't control the power well," said Luke, scratching his cheek. He had already reduced the power, but it wasn't enough. Now looked at Luke with a cold sweat on her forehead. She felt dread at the thought of almost getting close to Luke in the first round and attacking him. It would have been too bad for her pretty face to be hit like that. The group match is finalized. Luke and Wednesday's group is the winner. "We will give them their rewards later," said Charles, and the losers sighed in disappointment. They all wanted to win for the rewards. Plus, they would get better grades in the subject if they made a good impression. It was good practice, thought Luke, satisfied. The reward he was most interested in was the use of the VIP bathroom, a bathroom that only class reps could use. To be a class rep, you have to be democratically elected. So you must be very popular, which Luke is, but not in a good way. He is popular, but not sociable. Each year, there are 2 representatives, one male and one female, not in the specific classes of each type of outcast. That is, you must compete with those of your age from all species of outcasts. The current representatives for Luke's year are Xavier and Bianca, the most popular couple of their year, although Luke believes they don't have much time left as a couple. In addition to the use of VIP bathrooms, there are more rewards. Use the swimming pools when you feel like it. Usually, to use them you must ask permission or be in the swim club. The last reward is 2 days off where you can leave Nevermore. They must be on weekends only, where you can visit Jericho or whatever you want. As Nevermore is a boarding school, to get out you need to ask for permission and a valid reason. Usually, you don't get permission. Luke was given it for his interviews, as they were work-related, or when there was an important event in Jericho, they let all the students out. Maybe I can visit the Italian restaurant, Luke thought, remembering a new restaurant that opened in Jericho. Although he wouldn't have Natasha's permission. On the way back, Luke received several stares from his companions. They were all still amazed at his strength, but mostly at the way he fought. Wednesday also received many stares for the strength she demonstrated. The girl, since she got on the boat a couple of hours ago, still had the same expression as always. Luke didn't know how she did it. She didn't look tired, irritated, and of course not showing a hint of joy at her victory. He defeated those 2 first than me, thought Wednesday as he watched the river. She was not all happy about the rewards. She was slower than Luke in defeating a group, and she didn't like that. Although she considered Xavier and Mike more trouble than Arthur and Nick, especially since Arthur didn't have an annoying ability like manipulating the earth and didn't even have psychic powers useful for combat. Besides, he helped me, thought Wednesday, remembering how the tree branch covered her from the whip. For the first time on her face, a slight frown could be seen. She knew Luke helped her to annoy her. She knew how to see that annoying character from the first day she met him. In the first fight, he didn't move a muscle. It was strange that he suddenly wanted to help. The only thing I can do is train and next time finish my fight faster than him, Wednesday thought, returning to her stoic expression. It was the first time she had encountered a worthy opponent who had skills on par with her, a feeling she had never felt before. That same day, Luke received a metal plate that served him to open doors like the one in the bathroom. A VIP badge. He would have it for a month. So many amenities in the palm of my hand, thought Luke, looking with a slight smile at the badge. He knew the bathroom had a jacuzzi and was very large. He would have a luxurious and comfortable bath today. "Hey, Veronica, I need something," Luke said, sending a mental message to his cousin. Having a telepathic link was very useful, and neither of them had broken it so far. "Luke, what do you want?" asked a surprised Veronica, who was typing on her laptop. It was the first time she had spoken to her cousin since the summer. The last time she had seen him was in his rented house, sleeping with a normie. Something she didn't like at all. "I was wondering if you could get me some Nightshade Society books," Luke said. It was just a small favor. Several seconds passed, and he got no response. "If you want to use the Nightshade Society's library so badly, join it, womanizer," said Veronica angrily, and severed the telepathic link. Luke immediately felt the link was broken. His face was in disbelief. What happened? He knew his relationship with Veronica had stalled, but it wasn't for him to call her a womanizer and cut the link either. TSCH calls me a womanizer, and she has sex in a sacred place, Luke thought in annoyance. He should find the book somewhere else or go back to stealing them. He wanted to find information about the black aura to learn more techniques and how this aura works. He also wanted information about the hide. Now that Wednesday had arrived at Nevermore sooner than he thought, Professor Normie's plan might be in motion. He had to know the strength of the hide in this world that was much more dangerous than the series he saw in his past life. In one of Nevermore's numerous classrooms, the 12th grade students were having a class. The subject being taught was advanced werewolf transformations. So in the class, there were only werewolves. There were about 30 students, far more than the psychics, who were barely in the double digits. That's the key to controlling your transformation. No matter if it's a full moon or daytime, said the professor, who had a long, unkempt beard, long hair, and crescent glasses. His appearance was very scruffy. If you want to work in the council, you must control your transformation, or you'll be very limited, added the professor. You couldn't take on dangerous creatures or criminal outcasts if you depended on the full moon to have your full power. Just then the bell rang, signaling the end of the class. That's all for today. This is your last year, and it will be tough. Your rankings will be important for your future. Try hard and always be up to date. You may go, said the professor, closing his book. With class over, the students began to put their things away and talk to their friends as they got up from their desks. At a desk, a girl with light brown hair was standing still with her eyes fixed on her book. Gia, let's go eat, said a long black-haired Asian girl with long black hair, approaching the brown-haired girl. Erica, yeah, let's go, said Gia, putting her things away and walking towards the cafeteria with her best and only friend at Nevermore. What's wrong? Asked Erica, looking at her friend strangely. She was always chatty and upbeat. It was rare for her to be silent in the cafeteria. I was thinking about what the professor said. It's our senior year, and we're just as unpopular as we were our first year, said Gia in a depressing mood. Don't remind me. People confuse my name, said Erica, catching her friend's mood. We can't go on like this. We have to make our mark before we finish high school, said Gia with a new sting in her eyes. Her attitude took a 180-degree turn. She couldn't stay depressed any longer. It's easier said than done. We are mixed races. I can see the invisible barrier they put up when they talk to us, Erica said, getting even more depressed. Both Gia and Erica were mixed race. In Erica's case, her father was a werewolf and her mother was a vampire. She ended up having her father's werewolf genes. She was not lucky enough to have both genes. Otherwise, she would be very powerful and superior to her classmates. Who could underestimate her? As for Gia, it was worse. Her father was a normie, and her mother was a werewolf. She was born with a higher percentage of outcast genes and lived with her mother from a young age since her father abandoned them. Her bloodline, not being 100% werewolf, was weaker than that of the average student, so everything related to her powers cost her more. The werewolf transformation was only achieved a few months ago, when most had achieved it a year and a few months ago. She was a late bloomer. You must be positive. There's a party tonight. We can go and start leaving our legacy. Jack will go, Gia said, with emphasis on the latter. Jack see? Asked Erica with renewed interest. Gia nodded with a slight smile. She knew her friend had a crush on Jack since they entered Nevermore. Jack is one of the most popular students in his senior year. Unlike the other popular ones, he's nice to everyone, which is why Erica ended up falling in love with him. But he already has a girlfriend. And the worst part is that his girlfriend is Riley, said Erica, getting depressed again. Riley was one of the most popular girls in her senior year and a scary girl. She didn't understand how someone as nice as Jack C. could be with her. You don't have to worry about that. I heard the two of them fight. I don't think it will last long, though, since they always fight and then come back. But this is your chance to strike up a conversation with him, Gia said in a low tone, approaching Erica. Oh, it's true. It's the best chance I'll ever have. How do you know all that? Asked Erica. If I want to stop being invisible, I must be aware of all the rumors and gossip. I've eavesdropped on several conversations, replied Gia, puffing out her chest with pride for some reason. You have my respect. Fine, we'll go to that party today, said Erica, who also wanted to stop being unpopular. Later that night, both girls dressed as best they could and slipped out of their dorm room in the direction of the clandestine party. It was to be held in a disused hall near the gymnasium. The seniors had set it up for a party. It's here, quite a ways from the main building, commented Gia, seeing several familiar faces entering the hall through a double door. Music could be heard on the other side. Better. If any teachers find this, it won't be any good, said Erica, feeling nervous for several reasons. First, because it was a clandestine party. If they were caught, they would be punished. Second, because they had to leave their mark, something she saw as unlikely. Let's go before they close, said Gia, taking Erica by the arm and walking quickly. Stop. Only seniors are allowed, said a tall, dark-haired boy who was standing guard at the door. We are seniors, said Gia, and the boy looked at her strangely. As much as he wanted to make memories, he couldn't remember either of the two girls. We had a class with you today, Archie. In advanced werewolf transformation, I sit on your right side, Erica said. Oh, sure. Come on in, said Archie, not remembering, but since they knew where he sat in the advanced werewolf class, it must be true. As they were about to enter, 3 girls blocked the exit. The middle one was a tall brunette with long black hair. Gia and Erica recognized her as Riley Brielle, the most popular and bad girl in their grade. No half-breeds allowed at this party, Riley said with an evil grin, sipping alcohol from her glass. Oh, it was the half-breeds, thought Archie, remembering that there were 2 half-caste outcasts in his class. As far as he was concerned, he didn't care about such things. He didn't discriminate, but he wouldn't pick on Riley to defend him either. Oh, come on, Riley dashed before Gia could continue speaking. Riley spilled her entire drink all over her. Don't say my name with that foul mouth, half-breed. You're the worst of the two. A half-normie, half-werewolf. Sharing a class with you is a disgrace, Riley said with contempt towards Gia. Close the doors, Archie. Everyone's here, added Riley, going back inside with her friends. Archie took one look at Gia and Erica, and without thinking much more, he closed the doors. Are you okay, Gia? Asked Erica, concerned to see her friends soaking wet. Yes. Let's go back, said Gia in a low tone, wiping her face a bit and turning around to go back to her bedroom. Her mood was no longer positive like before. Her eyes were watery, but she held back the urge not to shed tears. Where are you going? That's not the way to the dorm, asked Erica. I want to clear my head a bit. You go back first, replied Gia, and she left Erica behind, who sighed and let her friend be alone. Is it so different that I'm half-normie? Thought Gia, depressed as she wandered the deserted corridors of Nevermore. For some reason, she remembered Carrie, a girl from a novel who is bullied by her classmates and ends up making a massacre at her school thanks to her psychic powers. Carrie was a book she loved. However, she wasn't thinking about doing a massacre. She just felt that she had some similarities to Carrie. With depressing and unoptimistic thoughts, she turned a corner, and halfway down the aisle, she noticed a boy looking at a vending machine. This fucking machine, cursed the boy, who was wearing a black Adidas sports outfit with white stripes. His hair looked freshly wet. He looked like he had taken a bath. Over his neck, he wore a white towel. Luke Poe, thought Gia, dumbfounded, immediately recognizing the boy cursing at the vending machine. Seconds ago, she was thinking about Carrie, and the boy in front of her was the person who wrote said play. Everyone at Nevermore knew this boy. Even though he was a 10th grader, even the seniors knew him. He was arguably one of the most popular people at Nevermore, the most famous, no doubt, because of his reputation as a successful writer. A famous and successful 15-year-old writer. His work, Carrie, sold over 1 million copies the first year it came out. He belonged to the Poe family, which, despite being the only living member, was still an old and famous family of psychics. His great-great-grandfather, Edgar Allan Poe, was very famous in both the Norman and outcast worlds. On top of that, he had swept the floor with 2 older students last year. A video came out of him aggressively and overwhelmingly defeating them. However, that was not the most important event he participated in. The most astonishing of all was last year's Poe Cup. Unknown hooded men attacked students on Raven Island, murdering a psychic student. Luke killed one of the attackers. Not even the senior participants had managed such a feat, and they were 2 powerful werewolves, Andrew and Tommy. Should I break this damn machine? Thought Luke. He had noticed the presence of a person, but thought nothing of it. It had been several days since he'd gotten the card to use the VIP bathroom. The best thing that has happened at Nevermore since the beginning of the year. The bathroom was gigantic and had many amenities. He used it late at night, so he could spend several hours relaxing undisturbed, watching shows in a hot tub, eating popcorn, and stuff. I have nothing to lose. Be brave, said Gia to herself, encouraging herself. The night couldn't get any worse. At best, she would be ignored by Luke. Hi, said Gia, approaching Luke. She was very nervous. She had loved Carrie and Luke's new novel. If her friend Erica had a crush on Jake C., her crush would be Luke, although her competition was much greater. Luke turned his head and looked at the unknown girl. The girl had light brown hair, combed in two high buns on each side of her head, with bangs falling softly on her forehead. Her face is fair-skinned and rounded, with slightly rosy cheeks and large brown eyes. As for her clothing, she wears a sweater with bright colors. The sweater is mostly purple with pink accents. She was short in stature, with a delicate figure. The girl was groomed. The only strange thing was that her hair was soaked with water or something like that. Hi, said Luke, returning the greeting, then looking back at the vending machine. He wasn't planning on putting in another dollar, even though he's a rich millionaire. Let me help you, said Gia, approaching the vending machine. She tapped it several times with her fist in different places. Seconds later, the Coke went down, and Luke was able to drink his soda without breaking school property. Thanks. How did you fix it? Asked Luke, opening his Coke and taking a sip. You're welcome. It's not the first time I've used this machine. I already got the hang of it when it jams, said Gia with a smile. Oh, you must teach me that trick, said Luke, interested. It won't be the last time he uses this faulty machine, knowing it will come in handy. He doesn't want to use his telekinetic powers for something so mundane. It's a secret technique. Sorry, I can't go spreading it around, said Gia with a mysterious smile. What a cheapskate, Luke said with a slightly amused smile. I can offer you some Coke for the knowledge. What do you say? Asked Luke, holding out his arm for Gia to take the Coke. An indirect kiss, thought Gia, looking at the Coke, especially the place where Luke had been drinking from. Deal, said Gia without a second thought, and taking the Coke from Luke. She then began to drink it at a slow pace. She should be thirsty, thought Luke. After drinking the Coke, Gia began to explain to Luke the strokes needed to unlock the vending machine. Also, the necessary force that needed to be used. Thanks for the method. Here, Luke said, passing his towel to Gia. He had noticed the girl's head was soaked. For me? Asked Gia, taking the towel and looking at it as if it was the cure for cancer. Yes, to dry you off. Then you give it back to me. Bye, said Luke, walking towards his bedroom. If the girl recognized him, she should recognize him in the cafeteria to give him back his towel. Wait, exclaimed Gia, and Luke stopped and looked at her. Can you pass me your number? So, later we can arrange a place and return your towel, said Gia, looking at the floor nervously. Yeah, sure. What's your name? Asked Luke. Gia. A few minutes later, they both had their numbers already dialed. Gia returned to her bedroom in disbelief. I got Luke Poe's number, and his towel, and an indirect kiss, thought Gia with a smile as she walked back to her dorm. She inwardly thanked Riley for soaking her and not letting her into the party. I'm hungry. What are you guys ordering today? Asked Xavier, walking towards the cafeteria with Luke and Ajax. The usual, Ajax replied. His mood had improved, although since the death of Sabrina, the fake Sabrina, his personality had changed, and he was now more emo. I won't be eating with you today, Luke said without elaborating. Oh, you have a date? Asked Xavier with a slight smile. Not a date. Just a girl I met a few days ago, Luke said with a grimace. He had agreed to have lunch with Gia today, and she would return his towel while he was at it. He was surprised at himself for how nice he had been to the unknown girl, but what was done was done. Okay, have a nice lunch. We'll be with Bianca and her friends, Xavier said without probing further. When he had his lunch ready on his tray, Luke started looking for Gia. He quickly found her and saw how she raised her hand to call him, so he started walking towards her. Accompanying Gia was an Asian girl with long black hair. Luke chatted with Gia these days and knew it was her friend named Erica. Oh God, you were telling the truth, said Erica, watching as Luke approached their table. Of course, said Gia with an offended air. Her friend didn't believe her that she had run into Luke, especially since she had gotten his number and towel. Hi, Luke. How was your first class? asked Gia with enthusiasm and a big smile. Hi. It was good, if a bit boring. Professor Meyer talks slow. Luke replied. Yeah, his classes always got boring to me. Plus, he doesn't let a single fly, said Gia with a chuckle, and Luke nodded. That's true. How was your class? Asked Luke. Good. We had fencing lessons with Professor Vlad. Oh yeah, you don't know what happened, said Gia, starting to tell everything with details and great enthusiasm. Luke listened attentively as he ate his breakfast and contributed some comments. Erica watched the conversation between Luke and Gia, not believing what she was witnessing. According to the rumors, Luke's personality was not the best in the world. Yet here, he was listening intently to her talkative and enthusiastic friend with a not at all displeased expression. Erica wasn't the only one watching Luke and Gia. Gia's classmates were watching with surprise that their classmate was having lunch with Luke Poe. Riley, who had scorned and humiliated Gia a few days ago, could not believe that she was now happily talking to Luke Poe, a student who is much more popular than her. Where are you going, Kat? Asked Riley. Seeing her friend standing up, she noticed that just like her, she was looking towards Luke's table. I'll be right back, said Kat without giving a specific answer. Hi, Luke, greeted Kat with a charming smile. Gia stopped her incessant chatter and looked at Kat with surprise. She knew this girl, as she was close friends with Riley. What bothered her most was that there was a picture circulating Nevermore. A picture of Kat next to Luke. What do you want? Asked Luke with little patience. He was enjoying his chat with Gia and had been interrupted. Besides, that this girl posted a picture with him without his consent. He let her sleep in his room, and that's how he paid her. Kat was surprised by the cold way Luke responded to her. No guy ever talked to her like that. Besides, she thought she had something more intimate with Luke. I've been texting you for days, and you haven't responded. The picture thing was a mistake. I sent it to a friend, and somehow it started getting passed around to more and more people, Kat said more sheepishly. I didn't respond to you because I'm busy, Luke said vaguely. He didn't want to tell her in front of everyone that he wasn't interested in her anymore. Gia and Erica. Hi, said Riley, appearing behind Kat. Besides her, Archie and a few other guys showed up. Hi, said Erica and Gia shyly. It's nice to meet you, Luke. I read your 2 novels. Those are fabulous, said Riley with a smile. Nodded Luke dryly without feeling praised. The last thing he needed was compliments from random people. Riley held her tray and along with her companions was about to sit at Luke, Gia, and Erica's table. Since there were only 3 of them, there was room for several more people. What are you doing? Asked Luke, losing what little patience he had. The last thing he wanted was to share lunch with people he didn't know, enough that he had to put up with Gia's friend, who kept staring at him while he ate. Can't we sit here? We're Gia and Erica's classmates, Riley said. Gia cursed in her mind what a scoundrel Riley was, but she didn't dare to say anything against her. Luke, although he didn't know about the problems between Gia and these classmates, could tell from Gia's shy attitude, so he doubted that she would get along with these people. You are her companions, but not mine. Go back to your table, Luke replied, dismissively waving them away before he lost any more patience. The dining room fell silent. Everyone was watching the scene going on at Luke's table. Xavier and Ajax from their table were shaking their heads. Wednesday, who was eating breakfast alone in the corner, watched with little interest. If it had been her, she would have swept the floor with those flies by now. Have respect for your seniors, boy, exclaimed Archie angrily. He wouldn't tolerate such a disrespectful brat. Respect? Thought Luke with a frown. A vein stood out on his forehead. He was eating quietly, and these people came to bother and wanted to sit down without even asking. Luke extended his hand towards Archie, curling his fingers slightly in a gripping gesture. Suddenly Archie felt as if an invisible hand was strangling him. His eyes widened in panic, bringing his hands to his neck, trying to free himself. But no one was strangling him in sight. Kat, Riley, and the others in their group felt an overwhelming pressure that almost brought them to their knees. Should I kill this shit? Wondered Luke. Archie gritted his teeth hard. For every second that passed, the force clenching him increased, and he had less airs and graces. As for Kat, Riley, and the others, he just used his telekinesis to generate pressure as if gravity had increased. This personality is correct to that of the rumors, thought Erica, looking at Luke with some fear. Although she enjoyed watching Riley suffer, she annoyed them for a long time now. She had it coming. In a moment, the pressure was gone. Kat and the others were able to stand and move normally again. Archie was on his knees, breathing heavily. "Beat it before I change my mind," Luke said coldly, looking at Archie. He had enough of putting up with bullies at his normie school. Now he could use his powers to put them in their place. Although to an observer, he looked like the bully. Archie was helped to his feet by his friends, and they began to walk as fast as they could away from Luke. They all remembered that the person in front of them had murdered an outcast last year. So, they had no more battle spirit. "See you later, Gia, Erica," said Riley under her breath, glaring hatefully at the two girls. She wouldn't let this go. They wouldn't have Luke's help at all times. Both girls put on an ugly expression. They would never be able to defeat Riley, let alone if he had the support of her friends. "Oh, that's a threat?" asked Luke, raising an eyebrow. The pressure around Riley suddenly increased. Within seconds, she was on her knees, struggling to keep from being crushed to the floor. "If I ever found out you tried anything against Gia or her friend, I won't let it go," said Luke, increasing the pressure. He'd had enough of breaking up with Enid because of the Spellmans. At least he would defend Gia from these idiots. Why was he doing this when he had only known her for a few days? Because he could and he wanted to. Sweeping the floor with them wasn't hard for him, and he had taken an interest in Gia. At least he would help her with her bullies. "Is he defending me?" thought Gia with flushed cheeks. "What's going on here?" asked a professor rushing towards Luke's table. Luke deactivated the pressure on Riley, allowing her to breathe normally. "If you have a problem with her, just tell me, okay?" said Luke, looking at Gia pointedly. "Yes," replied Gia, blushing, looking at Luke shyly. "See you later," said Luke, standing up. He had already lost his appetite and didn't feel like explaining to the professor what had happened. In a few seconds, he disappeared from the cafeteria. Several days have passed since Luke met Gia. Their relationship has improved these days. He finally met a girl he could watch a movie with, focusing on the damn movie. Gia had similar taste to him in video games and series. She could be considered an otaku. Their conversations were much more interesting and fun than with the other girls he'd been with this past while. Also, they hadn't had sex. Just a few kisses. Luke's opinion of Gia grew. She wasn't an easy girl. The first time she went to his room, she didn't sleep with him. Moving on to other issues more important than their current relationship. 2 murders occurred in Jericho. One of the victims was a normie high school girl from Jericho. She was found murdered and mutilated in the vicinity of the forest. The other victim was an elderly man well known to all Jericho neighbors. He always took a night walk. He was found mutilated on one of the paths. This could mean that the crazy Professor Normie has already set in motion the plan to revive Crackstone using the hide, or it is the Spellmans who sent some crazy creature or person to murder him. It wouldn't be very smart for him to murder people, as he would be tipping Luke off when he arrived in Jericho. So, Luke believes that the first option is the most viable. Because of the butterfly effect, he provoked the events of the series were happening before their time, although he didn't care much about it. He didn't consider the series a good reference. Because of the differences in powers and stuff, Luke wanted to read Professor Normie's mind, but he didn't do it. Some artifacts protect your mind. In a school with psychics who have such powers, the school could have given Normie ways to protect herself, or she could have artifacts since her mortal enemies are the outcasts, and she should know their powers. Another event that followed in the footsteps of the Netflix series was the assassination attempt on Wednesday. Luke learned of this from Xavier, who witnessed by chance how a gargoyle fell from the sky straight at Wednesday's head. The difference was that here, Xavier had no time to intervene, as Wednesday destroyed the gargoyle without difficulty. With this, Luke was able to confirm that Rowan is still trying to assassinate Wednesday, because of the prophecy which seems to remain unchanged. However, if he wants to assassinate Wednesday, he will have to come up with a very meticulous plan, as Wednesday swept the floor with him in the fight they had on Raven Island. With this, he could also confirm that Rowan had already joined the Nightshade Society. In this way, he found the prophetic drawing left by his mother when she was a student. It was strange that an unpopular person like Rowan could join the Nightshade Society, but it could be explained that he joined because of his family background. Since his mother was an old member of the Nightshade Society and a famous outcast, he was able to get in. Gia entered the Ravenloft dormitory, the dormitory Luke belonged to. Girls were not prohibited from entering male dorms as long as it was during normal hours. Several students recognized her as Luke's current girlfriend, so they greeted her respectfully. Although they had not yet made their relationship official, Gia had already come to Luke's dorm several times. "I still can't get used to it," thought Gia, nodding to the students. She looked like she was a mobster, and everyone greeted her with respect. This was because all the students in the Ravenloft dorm had great respect for Luke. Since he humiliated the students in other dorms and the Poe Cup, even though it was canceled, they had come to Raven Island first, and he killed one of the culprits of the attack. He was like a symbol of power and pride for the students of Ravenloft, especially for the students in the same year as Luke and a year younger. Unbeknownst to Luke, his prestige had increased compared to last year, when he was rude to everyone and no one liked him. Although from his perspective, not much had changed. Gia walked until she was in front of the door that led to Luke's dorm room. She knocked softly twice and waited. "Come in," someone said after a few seconds. Gia walked in and noticed two people in the bedroom. Luke's only two friends are Xavier and Ajax. "Hi, Xavier, Ajax. Where's Luke?" "He's not answering my messages." Gia greeted and asked if she noticed Luke wasn't in the room. "Oh, hi, Gia," replied Xavier, pausing the video game he was playing next to Ajax, who nodded his head in greeting. "If he's not answering your messages, he's most likely training. He puts his cell phone on silent," added Xavier. Xavier remembered the intense training Luke does every day and felt a shiver run down his spine. Since he came back from vacation, he not only trains his telekinesis, he also does weights and martial arts. Once he wanted to join him in training. A big mistake on his part. The next day, he felt all his bones and muscles sore, and he found it hard to walk and climb simple steps despite his outcast physique. "Which gym?" asked Gia. "At the secondary," replied Xavier. "Thanks, see ya," said Gia, waving goodbye and leaving the room. "So those are the girls Luke likes." "Hard to believe," commented Ajax after a few seconds. "What do you mean?" asked Xavier. "That he likes girls with a cheerful and enthusiastic nature. With the hottest senior girls, he barely dated once," explained Ajax's point. "It's true. Gia has several similarities to Enid," said Xavier. Both girls had that optimistic and cheerful aura about them. They pranced around happily as they walked and were very talkative. "That's what I'm talking about. The last thing I thought was that Luke liked those kind of girls. I was picturing more of a Wednesday Addams," Ajax said after thinking about which girl might click better with Luke's personality. "Wednesday Addams? That girl has a worse personality than Luke," said Xavier with a strange look on his face. Although he found Wednesday very attractive, her personality was very bad. Everyone who wanted to talk to her left in a panic in less than 5 minutes. Her tongue was biting and acidic. She did not hold back in her comments and seemed to see everyone as annoying flies. Since Nevermore began, Wednesday became an outcast. Being an outcast at an outcast school was a difficult feat to accomplish. "Worse? Don't you remember Luke at the beginning of last year?" asked Ajax. "That's right," said Xavier, unable to argue. "Luke last year was just as rude as Wednesday was now. He saw everyone as an annoyance and didn't want to talk to anyone. Thanks to Enid, he managed to open up more and stop being so grumpy. Speaking of something else, are you going to the Harvest Festival? You can invite Sarah. She's been interested in you for a while now," asked Xavier. "It's mandatory. Everyone has to go. The principal takes normie events very seriously, so we improve the image they have of us," said Ajax with a grimace. "Then invite Sarah," suggested Xavier. To forget the trauma of Sabrina, his deceased girlfriend, he could start dating Sarah, a siren friend of Bianca's. "I don't know. Maybe," said Ajax, not wanting to talk about it anymore. Gia walked into the secondary gym, which usually no one was using at this time of day, and saw a scene that left her speechless. Luke was in the center, and around him more than 25 kilograms discs were orbiting. The discs were moving at a moderate pace around him, as if he were a planet. Whoa! In all those discs, there must be more than a ton, right? Thought Gia in amazement. Her gaze focused on Luke, specifically on his bare chest and abdomen. It seemed that because of the training, he decided to take off his t-shirt. Luke, noticing Gia's arrival, had all the discs neatly back in place within seconds. At this rate, he would need to buy more discs from Larissa. "Hey, Gia, looking for me?" asked Luke, walking towards her. "Luke," said Gia, running and jumping towards Luke to hug him. "You need to control your strength a little more." "Werewolf strength is no joke," said Luke with a slight smile, catching Gia. "With your strength, no problem," said Gia with a little smile, and she started to kiss Luke. That's not what this is about. Luke thought, no matter how much he trains his muscles and strength, he will never reach the physical strength of a werewolf, even if she is a half-normie, half-werewolf. He can beat her with his telekinesis by directing it into his arms. It's like an enhancer, but he doesn't win at our base physics. If this is a dream, I don't want to be woken up, thought Gia, increasing the intensity of the kisses. Never in her best dreams would she imagine she could be in a relationship with Luke Poe. A crush is a love that seems impossible, but here she was, kissing Luke like she was his girlfriend, even though they hadn't made it official yet. From being a person no one remembered her name to a popular person overnight. "I'm all sweaty," said Luke, pulling away from Gia. "I don't care," said Gia, wiping off some spit. "You have a nice smell. It'll be bad if you get my sweaty smell. Anyway, what were you looking for me?" asked Luke, ending the kissing. Gia pouted, but Luke didn't notice as he was drying his sweat with a towel and drinking water. "In 2 days is the Harvest Festival. I was thinking we could go, you and me," said Gia nervously. "Oh, the Harvest Festival. It's already that time of year," thought Luke. "Fine by me," replied Luke. Anyway, it was mandatory. Although, he might not go since Larissa read his mother's letter telling him about the Spellmans. So she wouldn't force him to attend if there was a danger of him being attacked. Natasha is still looking for the whereabouts of the clues. "I have to research the events of the series," Luke thought. "Great. It'll be our first date outside of Nevermore," said Gia with a big smile. After hearing what she said, she put on a startled expression and looked at Luke. "What's with that face?" asked Luke in confusion. "It's a date, right? I mean, if you don't mind?" asked Gia, playing with the fingers of her hand. "Why all the fuss over a date?" wondered Luke internally. They already gave each other countless kisses, and Gia spent a lot of time in his bedroom. Just recently, on Halloween, the two of them had a movie marathon, staying awake and sleeping together, even though there was no sex. "Yeah, sure. I'm going to go take a bath now. Do you want to join me?" asked Luke with a slight smile. Gia's cheeks turned red as tomatoes. "And no, thanks. Talk to you later. Bye," said Gia, stuttering and leaving the gym quickly. "How cute," thought Luke. "You've become quite the Don Juan," commented Edgar with a smirk. As Luke's trainer, he was always present at his workouts and had witnessed the whole scene. A year ago, it would have been impossible for Luke to interact this way with a girl, but he has improved since summer vacation. "Shut up," Luke said with a grimace. He forgot that Edgar was there. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made that embarrassing comment. You could say it was very normie of him. "There's a killer on the loose at the Harvest Festival again." "Still, will you go?" asked Edgar. "If Luke wants to go, he won't forbid it. If an assassin attacks him, better. He can become stronger through battle. He never trusted the strength of one of his descendants that much." "I will go. That way they'll poke their heads out," Luke replied. He knew it wasn't about the Spellman, though. This was about Hyde being controlled by a normie. Although the Spellmans might try to assassinate him again, like last year, if so this time, he will get evidence, so the fuckers won't get away with it. In last year's Poe Cup attack, the Spellmans crossed the line. They committed a terrorist attack on a school full of outcasts. However, as Luke had no tangible evidence, his story was just that. Just a story. Luke had told the police officer about Sabrina and that she was a Spellman, but the officer could do nothing as there was no evidence. He even told him a piece of information that puzzled Luke. According to the cop, the Spellmans did not have a daughter named Sabrina Spellman, who possessed 2 auras, red and orange. If Sabrina returns to Nevermore with her henchmen, Luke this time will get proof, so make sure the lying bitch can't get away with a teleporter. Rowan will carry out his second assassination attempt on Wednesday, and that same night he will die at the hands of the Hyde. That's if everything happens like in the series Luke thought, without much confidence in this. If Rowan tries to confront Wednesday to assassinate her, Wednesday may end up assassinating him. Luke realized that this Wednesday is much stronger and colder than the one in the series. If someone tries to assassinate her, she will not hesitate. As Wednesday's group mate, he is the person she socializes with the most, and that's saying something. They barely converse. The goth girl has very few words. But when she speaks, be prepared for what she's going to say, because she doesn't waste her breath saying stupid things. Luke noted that Wednesday is a full-fledged loner. Everyone is afraid to approach her, as if her gaze could murder you. Luke barely talks to her in the group they have in Psychic Powers too. I can try to save Rowan. From Hyde or Wednesday, Luke thought. He wasn't doing it because he liked his psychic classmate. He was doing it so the crazy normie wouldn't have limbs for the ritual to revive. Besides, if another Nevermore student dies, it will put the school in a tough spot. And Luke gets along well with Larissa. He knows all the effort she puts in for the school and the outcasts. He can make some effort to keep Rowan from being killed. The day of the Harvest Festival is here. Today is the first day of the 2 total days. How do I look? Asked Gia, who had done her hair and makeup. Perfect. I'm sure Luke will be charmed, said Erica, giving a thumbs up. Today would be the first Harvest Festival that the two of them would not spend alone. She implored her friend to accompany her and Luke, and they ended up agreeing. I hope Luke's friends are handsome, Erica said. The main problem for her was their age. She didn't like boys younger than her, even if it was only 2 years. Xavier has a girlfriend, and Ajax seems to be starting to date a girl, said Gia. This she knew thanks to Luke. Alone again? Well, if nothing else, I'll be with popular, though more boys than me, thought Erica, feeling depressed. Why the worried look on your face? I should be worried, not you, said Erica, looking at Gia, who was playing with her hands and had a lost look on her face. I was thinking if I should ask Luke to go out with me, said Gia, unsure. Go out with you? You're already dating, Erica said, not understanding her friend. Not dating like that. Dating. You know, said Gia, and somehow Erica understood what she meant. Oh, you talk about making their relationship official. Well, you two had already been kissing for over a month, and you're in his room. Yet you can't do it yourself. That's a man's duty, said Erica, pointing her finger at Gia. It's the year 2021, said Gia. It doesn't matter. You can't do it yourself. You'll look desperate. I know you're afraid of another girl catching his interest, but you have to hang in there. What you can do is that, said Erica, lowering her tone on the last sentence. That? Asked Erica. You know sex, said Erica in a low tone. Of course not. We have to be boyfriend and girlfriend first. My first time can't be that unromantic, said Gia indignantly and a little embarrassed. Even though she liked Luke, she didn't want to have her first time with a guy she'd known for less than 3 months. How innocent you are. Do you think when Kat did it with him, she knew him inside out? They most likely met that same night, Erica said with a dismissive smile. If you take that long, he'll lose interest in you. You know how guys think, especially popular guys like him. Erica pressed. Don't say that. Luke's not like that. He wanted to do it before, but I stopped him, and he didn't get mad, Gia said, a little unsure. Her friend's words had swayed her a little. As Gia spent time in Luke's room, they were alone, and Gia did like making out, so Luke wanted to take it to the next level. His last relationships with girls were like this, kissing and then sex. Indeed, an amazing self-control, thought Erica. From what Gia was telling her, she knew how clingy her friend was and that she was making out with Luke. That a man with rumors of womanizing could control himself and not send Gia to hell for not wanting to be respectable. Well, do what you want. If you trust him, do it. You know him better than I do. Come on, we don't want the bug to go away, said Erica, taking Gia by the arm and walking out of the bedroom. That doesn't help at all, complained Gia internally as she was dragged away by Erica. She was now very undecided on how to act with Luke. What she didn't know was that this night would not go the way she expected it to. Luke was once again at the Harvest Festival. Twinkling lights and vibrant colors filled every part of the festival. The same Ferris wheel as last year stood majestically. There were some new food and game booths. This time, Luke came with a different bride, as unbelievable as it sounds. Although it's not quite right to call Gia a girlfriend. There are more stalls than last year, said Gia excitedly, looking around. She didn't know which stall to visit first. Just smelling the delicious food already made her hungry. Yeah, said Luke, who was turning his head in search of something else, not food. He was looking for Wednesday. The festival was mandatory. She had to be somewhere. The difference with the series is that she has freedom of movement, as Principal Weems doesn't guard her as a troubled student, although she does, but she doesn't go so far as to try to murder normies like in the series, or maybe she did. Will Wednesday try to escape Jericho? Thought Luke doubtfully. He didn't know what the goth girl, who always had the same expression on her face, was thinking. Since she doesn't have to go to therapy with a normie and is not watched by Weems, she could have escaped long ago, but that doesn't seem to be her goal. He was also trying to look for Rowan and Tyler, but among so many people, it was impossible to find them. If he extends his domain, he could find Rowan, as he knows of his presence. But for the moment, he must spend the night with his friends and Gia. Where are the others? Erica asked Luke. Xavier went to find his girlfriend. I have already sent them our location. They won't be long, Luke replied, sitting down on a bench. You seem distracted. What's on your mind? Asked Gia, sitting down next to Luke. Avoiding a murder, thought Luke. He couldn't answer that. On how pretty you look today, replied Luke, taking Gia by the waist and bringing his face close to hers. Thanks. I got all dressed up for you, said Gia, blushing and bringing her lips close to Luke's. Damn clingy couple, thought Erica. Luckily, at that moment, Xavier and the others arrived. Sorry, I'm late, Luke, said Xavier, walking towards his friend, who was always ranting if he had to wait. His friend was not identified as someone who was patient. Besides Xavier, there were Bianca, Ajax, Divina, Yoko, Kent, Divina's twin brother, and a girl whose name Luke didn't know. He only knew she was from the group of sirens following Bianca and Enid. Luke, upon seeing Enid, instantly pulled away from Gia and stood up. Hey, everyone, Luke said, greeting the group with a strange look on his face. It had been a long time since he had hung out with Bianca, Divina, Yoko, and Enid. His gaze met Enid's. I hope he didn't mind the tardiness. If Xavier knew how to read the cell phone location properly, we would have been here 5 minutes ago, Bianca said with annoyance. It's not my fault. The internet here stinks, Xavier said with a scowl, and the two started arguing as usual. The others seemed to be used to it and left them. They are? Asked Kent, looking at Erica and Gia behind Luke. Oh yes, this is Erica and Gia. My friends, said Luke, starting to introduce everyone in the group. Friend, thought Gia. Let's get going. I'm starving, said Kent, starting to push Xavier and Bianca. Despite that, we're still fighting. The group started moving around, visiting different fast food stands and games while chatting and laughing. Be careful with the blonde girl dressed in pink. She's Luke's ex-girlfriend, commented Erica in a low tone, approaching Gia. Luke was talking about video games with Ajax, and every so often he would slyly glance at Enid. Enid did the same. Yeah, I know, said Gia with an unsure expression. She had noticed how Luke was looking at his ex-girlfriend. Don't be insecure. Just stick to him and show dominance, said Erica, pulling Gia towards Luke. What's wrong? Asked Luke, seeing Gia hugging his arm. He felt something spongy on his arm. I want to try that, said Gia, pointing her finger at a game stand. It was the first thing that came to her mind. Okay, let's go, said Luke, walking toward the stand. It was a balloon-popping booth. Then it was different games until they came to one where the targets were moving ducklings, each with a different score. There were smaller, faster ducks that scored more points than the larger, slower ducks. With a toy rifle, you had to shoot them. Look at the best prizes, said Gia, seeing 3 huge stuffed animals. They were a unicorn, a cute, giant-sized kitten, and a cute elephant. These were much better than the prizes in the other booths. Can you win it for me? I suck at shooting. You go to the archery club? Asked Gia, clasping her hands together and making a puppy dog face. Yeah, leave it to me, nodded Luke. Although the last time I gave one of those stuffed animals as a gift, the person died, he added in a low tone, remembering Sabrina. Although she hadn't died in a real way, she only faked her death, but a doppelganger of her did die in a real way. Following that logic, I would have to make several gifts out of these stuffed animals, said a cold, monotone voice. Luke turned his head and noticed a girl with 2 black braids, pale skin, and a blank expression. She held a rifle in one hand and was firing with impeccable accuracy. Her clothing was a black jacket that she wore unzipped underneath a t-shirt with black and white lines. Wednesday, thought Luke in surprise. He hadn't even noticed her. With so many people, Wednesday's presence was harder to notice with his domain. The girl did look like a ghost. The chances of them dying will be low. You could experiment or eliminate them on your own, Luke commented, paying to try to win the prize. If I could do it, I would have done it already. After I assassinate them, I have a lot of annoying things to take care of, said Wednesday with a grimace. She shot, and the bullet hit right in the duckling's head. That's the first time I've seen her make a disapproving expression, thought Luke. Most likely, Wednesday wants to murder normies. The bullying normies that were annoying her and her brother. Again, the norms of normie society save those people. The same thing happened to Luke with the bullies at his normie school. Many times, he thought about killing them, but he didn't do it because of all the trouble he would have to face. Plus, he didn't know what world he was in, and he didn't want to be captured for experiments like he was a mutant or something. Eliminated? Murdered? Are they talking about the ducklings? Thought Gia, looking at Luke and Wednesday, who were holding 2 toy rifles that looked very real. Perfect score, said the stallman in disbelief that this gothic girl hadn't missed a bullet, and only, what prizes do you want, girl? Asked the stall owner, pointing to the 3 large stuffed animals. Don't you have something like a scorpion or a spider? Asked Wednesday, looking at the stuffed animals in disgust. What do you say? A stuffed animal of a scorpion? Said the man, looking strangely at the goth girl. You must be from that school for weirdos, he added, looking at her more cautiously. If you mean Nevermore, yes. I'm from there. Keep the stuffed animal. I'll give it to you, said Wednesday, leaving the rifle on the table and leaving the place. She already had the first subject of her experiment. If this man died, giving away giant stuffed animals could be a harbinger of death. Your turn, kid, said the man, shaking his head. Luke, who started shooting. He had to finish quickly and follow Wednesday. His aim had improved, but it was not up to Wednesday's level. He could only reach her if he used his telekinesis to maneuver the bullets. Minutes later, his turn was over. He scored enough for one of the 3 plushies Gia wanted. You choose. I have to go to the bathroom, Luke said, leaving Gia at the stall with a confused expression. He widened his domain and began to look for Wednesday's presence. Among so many people, it was difficult, but he found her after a few minutes. The girl was already away from the fair. She seemed to be heading into the forest, following another person Luke recognized. It was Rowan. Luckily, I'll make it in time, Luke thought, starting to run in Wednesday's direction. Hey, Luke, where are you going? Asked Xavier, stepping into Luke's path, who almost collided with him. Luckily, he managed to stop. No time to explain. Follow me, Luke said impatiently as he dodged him and started running again. What's the rush? Asked Xavier, following Luke. Don't you want to ask me why I'm alone? I've had enough of Bianca's incessant complaining, he added angrily. You'll tell me later. Now follow me, Luke said. They walked deeper into the forest until Luke stopped and hid behind a large tree. What exactly are we doing? Asked Xavier. Look, said Luke, pointing in a specific direction. Xavier looked and noticed 2 familiar people, Rowan and Wednesday. They seemed to be having a conversation in the dark of the forest. Why did you guys come here? Asked Enid, who had followed them. Seeing 2 of your classmates running was a strange thing, especially if it was Luke. Besides, she was bored. Bianca was in a very bad mood. Yoko and Divina seemed to be on a date. Ken was getting along very well with a girl named Erica. Lastly, Ajax was improving his relationship with Sarah. Enid, come closer and watch, Luke said, waving his hand. Enid curiously approached Luke and watch her roommate talking to a bespectacled boy she recognized but hadn't seen much of. "What's wrong with Rowan? He looks deranged," Xavier commented. Rowan's appearance had badly deteriorated. "I don't know. Let's try to listen," Luke said, sharpening his hearing. "I don't have time to explain, but you're in danger," said Wednesday in a serious tone to Rowan. Usually, she wouldn't worry about a person's well-being, but she had just had a vision of Rowan dying horribly. At this comment, Rowan only laughed, puzzling Wednesday. "Why is he laughing?" asked Enid in disgust. It gave a very bad feeling to Rowan's laugh, and his face seemed to have aged these last few days. "You got it backward. You're in danger," exclaimed Rowan, reaching out his hand and wanting to immobilize Wednesday with his telekinesis. However, Wednesday vanished into the shadow before she could be immobilized and appeared elsewhere. "What are you doing?" asked Wednesday, confused and at the same time in an icy tone. "I save everyone from you." "I must kill you," said Rowan with an increasingly unhinged expression. With both hands using them as a focus, he pointed at a tree, which, in a few breaths, pulled it from its roots and floated. "He's gone crazy," asked Enid in exultation. The ears of the outcasts were superior to those of the normies. Despite the distance, the three could hear what Rowan said. "Looks like he improved his strength," thought Luke, not very impressed. A tree weighed about 300 to 400 kilograms, but looking at Rowan's exhausted face, it seemed that was his limit. "So, it was you who tried to assassinate me with the gargoyle." "A lazy assassination attempt." "You should try harder," said Wednesday, not scared at all. "Shut up," shouted Rowan, throwing the tree at full speed to crush Wednesday. If that tree hit Wednesday at that speed, it would make mincemeat out of her. However, Wednesday didn't move. Dark energy began to swirl in her hand. Quickly, that dark energy took shape, solidifying into an all-black scythe that emitted a gloomy, icy aura. Wednesday made a slashing motion, and the scythe cut through the tree as if it were tofu. Before Rowan could panic, the girl appeared very close to him, moving through the shadows. "Holy shit," thought Rowan, creating a barrier around his entire body. Wednesday hit the barrier with her scythe. On the third hit, she destroyed it completely, and Rowan was exhausted. He wanted to give all his strength to that barrier, but didn't hold 5 hits. "This is bad," thought Rowan with fear, seeing Wednesday's pale face that in the darkness stood out more. Her dark eyes, which looked like the abyss, looked at him without emotion. Rowan looked at the ground in terror. Dark hands came out of the ground and began to imprison him. They looked like the very hands of hell. His whole body was covered with these, and he could no longer move. Rowan's eyes were also covered, and he could see nothing. Wednesday knew he could activate his telekinesis with his eyes, as he was one of the focus. "You put up a better fight than last time. It's still disappointing, though. Before you talk about killing me, you should get stronger," Wednesday said in an icy, unchanged tone. The only thing that confused her was her vision. Would she be the one to kill Rowan? She planned to kill him, but not in such a horrible way. She would behead him. She wouldn't torture him. She didn't have time for that. "Will she kill him?" asked Enid, looking at Wednesday, who was aiming at Rowan's neck with her dark scythe. "Most likely yes," Luke replied without hesitation. "I know that's right, but maybe it's too much." "She could hand him over," Xavier said, though he had no plans to intervene. Since Wednesday defeated him handily, she could be merciful and just turn him over to the outcast police. "Why do you guys take it so easily?" asked Enid with a frightened look on her face. She didn't want to witness another murder. Such is the way of the outcast society. "You're very kind," Enid, replied Luke, looking at Enid. "It's weird that you understand it so well when you lived in a normie orphanage," commented Xavier. However, Luke didn't hear him. Enid and he were staring at each other. "Is it bad that I'm nice?" asked Enid, staring at Luke. "Of course not. It's just that being so nice would put you in difficult situations if you run into people who want to murder you," replied Luke. "Is that why you left me? Why were you afraid to put yourself in difficult situations because of me?" asked Enid. She knew about the grudge between the Spellman family and the Poe family. Her werewolf family was among the most important in America's outcast society. Luke didn't know what to say. Luckily, Xavier intervened at that moment. "Look, Rowan is showing her something," he said, and they both stopped their chatter. The girl in the drawing is you. My mother drew that picture 25 years ago when she was a student at Nevermore, explained Rowan, who was on his knees, unable to see anything. Wednesday held up a drawing showing a girl who looked like her behind her a burning and shattered stage. You want to murder me over a simple drawing? That's new, commented Wednesday with a raised eyebrow. My mother was a powerful seer. She told me before she died that you would be the cause of the destruction in Nevermore, Rowan said angrily, but unable to break free. There's someone else here. Who would that be? Asked Wednesday without giving Rowan's tantrum a second thought. Behind the supposed girl who was her was a tall boy with almost blonde, brown hair sitting on a shattered column. Luke Poe, replied Rowan. Me? Thought Luke in surprise. He didn't know he would enter the prophecy. Why didn't you try to assassinate Luke Poe? Do you think I'm weaker than him? Asked Wednesday in a more icy tone. She pressed the scythe harder into Rowan's neck. As Wednesday was about to decapitate Rowan, a deafening roar was heard in the place. Out of the dark forest jumped a grotesque and horrible creature. The creature had a muscular body with dark gray skin, which looked wrinkled and taut over its bones and muscles. Its posture is crouched with a hunchback. The head is large in comparison to the body, with a face that has human features but is extremely deformed. The eyes are large, round, and bright red, standing out aggressively on its face. The mouth is wide and full of sharp, uneven teeth. On the top of his head, he has a sparse amount of brown, messy hair. Its arms are long and end in huge hands, with elongated fingers ending in sharp, pointed claws. Luke recognized the creature immediately, a hide that exuded a very high murderous intent. The hide leaped toward Rowan, pointing its sharp claws. Wednesday, recognizing the threat, faded into her own shadow. What's going on? Asked Rowan, but just then he felt an excruciating pain in his back, sharp claws tearing at his skin. Luckily, before the claws tore him further, he was moved by an invisible force at an incredible speed. Rowan, who no longer had shadows covering his eyes, looked up, recognizing Luke, who had taken a step and was looking at the hide with a slight smile. Luke, why did you save me? Asked Rowan with pain all over his back. If Wednesday wants to murder you, I'll allow it. That's her right. However, I can't let an unknown hide murder a fellow student at Nevermore, replied Luke. Rowan, before he could say anything, passed out from the pain and blood loss. Plus, he was already exhausted from all the power he used earlier. He's losing a lot of blood. He needs to be attended to immediately, said Enid, approaching Rowan and doing a quick check. We have a small problem, said Xavier, looking at the hide, who was roaring furiously at not being able to slay his prey. Enid looked up at the monster. It was ugly and scary, but looking at Luke's back, she felt a lot of reassurance. She was not afraid. She felt safe if Luke was with her, a feeling she longed for. Since when are they watching? Thought Wednesday, looking sideways at Luke and the other two. Then she looked at the monster that lunged furiously at Luke. A teenage hide, a perfect opponent to hone your skills, said Edgar, who hovered near Luke. Edgar, as Luke's teacher, knew that what he needed most was experience in battles to the death. He had had some, but it wasn't enough. Luke generated crushing pressure around Hyde. Hundreds of kilograms were crushing him, trying to break him, but he continued his onslaught. His speed slowed just a little. This is serious, thought Luke. He had Enid, Xavier, and a dying Rowan behind him. To lessen the danger to them, he took a step forward towards the hide. On his arm, he concentrated and created bands of telekinetic energy that led to his fist. First, he waited for the hide to attack him. His speed was superhuman, the fastest speed he had ever faced. However, his observation hockey allowed him to dodge the monster's claws by inches, which left a trail of cutting and dangerous air. Without missing a beat, Luke threw his fist forward, aiming it at the monster's face. Upon impact, bands of telekinetic energy are released with explosive force. The monster's face deforms from the blow, and in the blink of an eye, it is thrown backward like a rag doll, flying through the air and landing with a thunderous crunch several feet away. 3 trees shattered, thought Luke in awe of the power of his fist. This time he didn't hold back and struck with all his might. Hyde stood up again in a short time. His face was mangled. He lost some teeth, and his nose was broken. Even his head seemed somewhat caved in. However, it glared even more furiously at Luke. He roared louder than before and went back on the attack again. Superhuman regeneration, Luke muttered with a grimace. Edgar had explained Hyde's powers to him. They were broken. If he suffered that damage, he would no longer be able to get up. The price of those powers is to be a horrible, uncontrolled monster. Luke didn't try to immobilize the Hyde. He knew it was useless. He didn't have what it took to hold him still. His strength was too much. He controlled the tree that split Wednesday in half and sent it flying at the monster from different places. One log from the front and another from the back. He increased the speed of the logs, making them more powerful on impact and harder to evade or attack. The Hyde used its claws to destroy the log from the front. His claws were left in bad shape and bleeding. It was no joke that more than 300 kilograms are coming at you at a high speed. In defending himself from the first log, he was left defenseless with the other log impacting his back. Luke thought it would go through him, but it did not. The Hyde's grayish skin seemed very tough. The Hyde grunted in pain, but did not suffer a serious wound. Hyde turned around and grabbed the log on his back with his hands. At that precise moment, Wednesday emerged from the shadows near him. In her left hand, she wielded her dark scythe. With incredible speed, Wednesday swung her scythe at Hyde's face, aiming for his huge, ugly red eyes. The height of the two was uneven, but the scythe released waves of dark energy that reached Hyde's eyes and cut them. Roar! The Hyde roared in pain. The eyes were a sensitive area. His roar was one of pain and fury. Unable to see, he began to wave his long arms to all sides. Wednesday vanished and appeared away from him. Luke knew he had to take advantage of this opportunity. The Hyde's eyes would recover in a short time. Before that, he must do more damage to him. Two trees behind Luke broke loose from their roots and floated within seconds. Luke's speed in getting two trees out of the ground was much faster than in the past. The trees headed upwards towards the Hyde. After that, one tree came down at high speed until it hit Hyde's head. Immediately, the other tree came down and hit the Hyde again. He used the trees as hammers. 2 blows, 3 blows, 5 blows. The trees took turns smashing the Hyde. A cloud of dirt and dust rose. Only the sound of the collision between the trees and the hard skin of the Hyde could be heard. After dozens of blows, the trees broke in half. The Hyde skin was tougher than Luke had imagined. Yet he had pounded it mercilessly. Its grunts had ceased. I kept my promise, Luke thought, remembering that the first time he came to Jericho, he thought about crushing Tyler if he found him turned into Hyde. With a slashing motion, he created a gust of wind with his telekinetic waves dissipating the cloud of dirt and dust that had been made. Luke and Wednesday approached the pit that was created by the tree attacks. The Hyde was lying in the center. Luke was reminded of Yamcha from Dragon Ball. He's regenerating rapidly, Luke commented, seeing how the wounds he and Wednesday caused were healing. Then we should pound him some more. Until he stops healing, said Wednesday in her usual tone. Within seconds, the Hyde stood up and glared at them both in fury. His ugly red eyes had already recovered. He roared louder than before and jumped at them again. As he was about to hit them, both Luke and Wednesday created their respective shields. A telekinetic shield and a darkness shield. Both shields joined together and created a stronger one. The Hyde hit the joint shield with his huge claw and failed to destroy it despite screaming with more anger. In a second, it was repelled and sent away from them. Without another word, Luke and Wednesday began to attack Hyde. Their movements were well executed and did not get in each other's way. Wednesday was in charge of attacking stealthily. Her attacks were very lethal, as she waited for the right moment to do damage with her dark scythe. Luke was in close combat with the Hyde. His observation of hockey allowed him to react to the beast's quick attacks and dodge them perfectly. He managed to dodge it thanks to the telekinetic waves he created to push himself, as his base physique could not compare to that of Hyde. He had to be very precise, but he did not miss. When Wednesday attacked, Luke took advantage and used dozens of stones to bombard Hyde. Between the two of them, they began to beat up the Hyde. His healing abilities were getting worse and worse, and his ferocity was diminishing. "I don't know who the monsters are," commented Xavier, watching as Luke and Wednesday beat the crap out of the Hyde, who looked confused. He'd never been beaten up so one-sidedly. He had already killed several people, and no one was a challenge. "The two of them do good teamwork," Enid muttered, clenching her fists tightly to the point that she hurt her palms and blood came out. If she controlled her powers better, she could help Luke and not be a useless side-eye. "Looks like they don't need our help," said Xavier, crossing his arms. Not much he could do. His whip could be of use in battle, but they didn't look like they needed reinforcement. The Hyde was a mess. His healing was no longer working at 100%. One of his eyes was cut and would no longer heal. He had cuts all over him, and Luke had hit him, breaking many bones and causing internal injuries. "What's up, monster? Where's your previous ferocity?" asked Luke, walking towards Hyde while snapping his fingers. On his face was a maniacal grin. He was already savoring the last blow that would break the beast's skull. He would no longer be able to heal as before. "You put up more of a fight than Rowan. Your head will make a nice decoration in my room," said Wednesday, walking towards the Hyde. She held the scythe, and with her pale face, she looked like the Grim Reaper himself. She was already savoring the moment when the monster's head separated from his body. She had done well to come to Nevermore. Luke and Wednesday looked at each other sideways. This would be a competition. The first one to get to the Hyde and give him the final blow would win. Just then, out of a bush came several people. "What's going on here?" asked a girl they all recognized. It was Bianca. Besides her came Gia, Erica, Divina, Yoko, and Kent. The bad thing was that they had come out of a bush near the Hyde, who was watching them with his only functional eye. With his last strength, the Hyde jumped towards the new group of people. They were not as scary as those two. The strength of these new people didn't seem like a big deal to the monster. The Hyde was advancing at alarming speed. Its sharp claws extended toward Bianca and the others, who were petrified with fear at the sight of a horrible monster running towards them. "Shit," thought Luke as he sped towards the Hyde. He noticed that the ugly beast was looking with one eye at Gia, as it was closer than the others. Wednesday, who was about to follow the Hyde, noticed how Luke moved at a much faster speed than before. His feet don't touch the ground, thought Wednesday, stopping instead. Luke was flying at great speed and caught up with the Hyde in a few seconds. He spun in midair and directed the heel of his foot toward the back of the moving monster's neck. Boom! The sound of the blow echoed like a cannon shot. Luke increased his strength in the blow with his telekinesis. The method was the same as on his fist, but on his foot. His foot connected with great force, burying the monster in the ground. The impact created a large cloud of dust and debris, which rose in a thick blanket around the impact zone, briefly obscuring the view. "Phew, I made it in time. Flying is always faster," thought Luke, sighing in relief. He felt a slight pain in his foot. As the cloud of smoke began to dissipate, Luke could be seen hovering over the newly formed small crater. Gia and the others looked with wide eyes at Luke floating near the crater. His stamina is respectable, thought Luke, watching as the Hyde struggled to his feet. So he motioned for Gia and the others to stay away. The battle hadn't lasted long. Only a few minutes. However, the damage done to the Hyde was high, but here he was getting up. Luke could stay like this all night, as long as he didn't take such dangerous blows as the Hyde had taken. From in front of Luke came Wednesday, and lowering her gaze, she looked down at the Hyde, who seemed cornered. The Hyde opened its mouth, and a deafening roar burst from its throat, a sound so powerful that it vibrated the air around him. The roar wasn't just a scream of fury. It was a sonic shockwave that spread like an invisible explosion. Luke backed up until he was close to Gia, Bianca, Ajax, and the others. With incredible speed, he created a barrier that protected everyone from the roar. The ground shook, the leaves of nearby trees shook violently, and birds fled in disorderly chaos. Wednesday had also stepped back and created a dark shield around her. She did not expect a roar to be so powerful and dangerous. Taking advantage of the confusion, the Hyde jumped and with incredible agility disappeared into the thick forest. His leap covered more than 10 meters distance, and with his claws, he helped himself to move between the trees. That's a pity, thought Luke, shaking his head. His barrier dissipated. With his dominance in flight, he could follow the hide and hunt it down, but he wouldn't. It was too much trouble. He didn't think the hide was a threat. Besides, he had to check on Enid's and, of course, Rowan's condition. It's an impure hide, and its strength is great, thought Luke. He had gained some useful information in this battle. Tyler had a normie father. If both his parents had been hide, his strength would have been greater. Although he controlled the fight, and at no point did he think he might lose or be seriously injured, this hide's regeneration, stamina, and strength were no joke. Besides, it was 2 versus 1. Even though he could defeat him by himself, he didn't even use his blue aura. He could have ordered him to stop and used those seconds to beat him. Even though he is a beast, he still has brains, and mind control works as long as they're simple commands like stop. "What was that monster?" asked Kent, who was still shaking as he remembered the hide's murderous look. "A hide," answered Luke, and everyone was surprised. They knew about this type of outcast, although he could be considered a monster. An outcast who turns into a horrible beast with no way to control his impulses. "Will Enid be okay?" thought Luke worriedly, flying at incredible speed towards Enid. He didn't know what range the hide's roar had. "Luke, wait," said Gia, running towards Luke. The others followed her. Luke, within seconds, arrived at Enid's side. He landed and walked over to her. "Are you okay?" asked Luke, examining Enid. He noticed that in her ears there was a trace of blood. For some unknown reason to him, there was also blood on her palms. "I'm fine." From a distance. "The damage wasn't much," replied Enid with a smile, hiding her hands behind her back. "You're bleeding," Luke said, moving closer to her. From one of his pockets, he pulled out a handkerchief and started wiping the blood in Enid's ears. "Damn monster. I'll hit him harder next time," thought Luke as he cleaned Enid. "Thanks," murmured Enid, seeing Luke's face, which was close to her. Before she could do anything stupid, the others came over. "What happened here, Xavier?" asked Bianca in a historical tone. She saw the place destroyed, a horrible monster, and Rowan lying on the ground, unconscious and with a big wound. "Shouldn't you ask me if I'm okay?" asked Xavier with a frown. His ears also had blood in them, as did Enid's, but it was nothing serious. "That's what I asked," said Bianca, raising her tone of voice. "You asked what happened here. Not if I'm okay," said Xavier, also raising his voice. "Did I hurt your feelings? I thought I was the girl in this relationship," Bianca said with irritation. "They keep fighting," thought Luke, rolling his eyes. "Stop fighting. Rowan was attacked by that beast. He's losing a lot of blood." "He's still alive," said Yoko, bending down and taking Rowan's pulse, who was pale and unconscious. "We must get him to the hospital right away," said Kent. "We won't make it. His wound is serious," said Bianca, putting aside her fight with Xavier. "He's trying to murder Wednesday." "I guess it's karma," commented Xavier, shaking his head. "What?" they all asked, surprised and uncomprehending. Xavier told them everything he saw in a nutshell. How Rowan said in his own words that he wanted to assassinate Wednesday, and that he had tried before. He didn't tell about the prophecy or why Rowan wanted to assassinate Wednesday specifically. As that prophecy involved his friend, he decided to hide it so as not to give Luke trouble. Wednesday, who was standing silently, watched the dying Rowan. She was weighing on a scale whether to murder him or not. Since he wanted her murdered, it was her right to end the grudge. "What will you do?" asked Luke, and everyone looked at Wednesday. "Finishing off dying people is no fun at all. I'll let him live if he makes it through tonight," Wednesday replied in a monotone. "Fun," thought everyone except Luke. "You can fly, can't you, Luke?" asked Yoko, looking at Luke, who was standing with his arms crossed, looking at Rowan's pale face. They all looked at Luke with incredulous faces. The ability to fly in a telekinetic was advanced. Older Yellow Aura psychics have that ability. For a classmate of his age to be able to fly at that speed was an incredible feat to witness. If he can dig up roots with his telekinesis without seeing them, it makes sense that he can control his own body to fly, thought Wednesday. Though she was still amazed at Luke's talent for being able to sense objects and his own body without seeing them. It's either that or, thought Wednesday, narrowing her eyes as she looked at Luke. Yes, I can, Luke replied. They had already seen it, and it wasn't something he wanted to hide either. If you fly Rowan to the hospital, he could be saved. Will you do it? Asked Yoko with a strange expression. If he saves them from Hyde, he'll try to save Rowan too, right? Please, Luke, Enid said in a low tone, grabbing Luke's sleeve with her hand. She didn't want to see another classmate die. Even if Rowan attempted murder on a Wednesday, she no longer cared if he lived or died. At least they could save him and let the outcast justice take care of Rowan. Fine, I'll do it, Luke replied without much hesitation. Wednesday already said she didn't care if Rowan lived or died. He tried to save Rowan from Hyde so he could take him to the hospital so the idiot in glasses wouldn't die. This way, he would help Larissa and Nevermore, since it's not a good thing for a student to die for a monster. You're coming too. You're hurt, Luke said, looking at Enid. Rowan started to float up from the ground. What? Me? Asked Enid, pointing a finger at herself. Yes. Sure, if you want, said Luke, scratching his cheek. Yeah? Yes, of course I want to. I'm hurt. My ears hurt, and I have some cuts on my palms, said Enid, showing off her wound for some reason. Fine. Climb on my back, said Luke, turning his back to Enid, who smiled and climbed on Luke, interlocking her arms and gripping him tightly. With Enid on his back and Rowan hovering nearby, he took off at a moderate pace so as not to scare Enid. I hope you're not afraid of heights, commented Luke, flying higher and higher. If it's with you, I'm not afraid of anything, murmured Enid to herself, sinking her head into Luke's neck. What did you say? Asked Luke, who didn't hear because of Enid's low tone and the wind in his face. Nothing, said Enid with a slight smile. The night was clear and beautiful. The half-moon lit the road, and a gentle breeze hit Luke's face as he made his way to the hospital. It would have been a more romantic scene if they didn't have a dying man flying beside them. What a cute couple, Kent said, watching as Luke and Enid drifted farther and farther apart in the sky. Ex-couple, Divina corrected. Ex-couple, thought Wednesday with a raised eyebrow. She's Enid's roommate, an enthusiastic person who always dresses in bright colors. The last thing she would think was that Enid was Luke's girlfriend. From what she knew of Luke, he didn't seem like the kind of person who would put up with such an enthusiastic and happy person. They should get back together. They're cute together, Kent said, and Yoko nudged him as she slyly pointed her head at Gia, who was looking skyward. Luke was waiting in one of the seats at Jericho General Hospital for Enid. As for Rowan, it looked like he might be saved. He was being treated in the emergency room, and Principal Weems had already been called. It would only be a matter of time before she got here, asking what the hell happened. Just then, out of one of the doors came Enid. In her hands, she was wearing bandages, and her ears Are you feeling better? Asked Luke, getting up from his seat. Yes. They were only minor injuries. Don't worry, said Enid without her usual enthusiasm. What's wrong? Why the sad face? Asked Luke. I was useless again, and you had to protect me, said Enid in a depressed tone, looking at the floor. Is she sad about that? Thought Luke. Seeing Enid's sad face, he was about to tell her that it didn't matter. He would protect her as many times as necessary, but he stopped himself. That was the reason he had ended his relationship with her. He was afraid that she would be attacked because of him, and he would not be able to protect her. The words Enid's mother said to him made him think that, if it were up to him, he would never have ended it with Enid. After all, he had fallen in love with Enid. Yes, he had fallen in love. He wasn't in love with Enid at first, but eventually, it ended up that way. Even he didn't realize that until he thought about it carefully. In the other girls he was with, he was just looking for a replacement for Enid, but none of them succeeded. It was strange that he ended up falling in love with a girl so different from him, but it gave a different color to his life. I am far inferior compared to Wednesday, said Enid, clenching her fists tightly. She had seen how her roommate fought, and she was strong. Luke kept silent. If he spoke, all the effort he made to keep Enid away from him would be in vain. That won't stay that way, though. Luke, said Enid, suddenly regaining her energy. Yes? Asked Luke, surprised by Enid's sudden energy. I'll get stronger. Strong enough not to be a burden and fight by your side, said Enid decisively. Fight by my side? thought Luke. He knew Enid should be aware of the conflict between the Spellmans and the Poe. Her werewolf family was one of the oldest, though she must not think the prestigious Spellman family had demonic dealings. So, saying that is leaving between the lines that she will fight alongside him against the Spellmans regardless of the power of this family or the opinion of her parents. If I can be strong enough, you must promise me one thing, Enid added, looking Luke in the eye. What thing? Asked Luke, sensing that this conversation was going down a path he couldn't control. You'll tell me the truth about why you left me, and if I believe it's because of what I think. You'll come back to me, said Enid, raising her voice on the last sentence. So, answer me, said Enid, moving closer to Luke to press him. She sure is pushy when she wants to be, thought Luke, noting the determined look on Enid's face. Fine, I'll do it, but we need to clear up a few things, said Luke, sighing internally. What things? Asked Enid with a smile. Already, Luke had agreed. Now, she just had to train like crazy. I'll consider you strong enough if you can defeat that Hyde all by yourself, replied Luke, and the smile on Enid's face disappeared. Isn't that too much? Asked Enid doubtfully. Where did your confidence go? You're a werewolf. You should be able to defeat that Hyde if you try hard enough, said Luke with a slight smile. In the series, Enid put up a fight against Hyde, but was defeated. She was able to beat him thanks to the intervention of the sheriff who shot Hyde. However, in this world, Luke can confirm that Hyde is much more powerful. Still, Enid should be able to defeat him with enough training. Her lineage is pure and among the oldest of werewolves. If she is disciplined, it is an achievable goal. I'll do it. I'll crush that ugly monster, said Enid, who was annoyed by Luke's provocation. That's the attitude, said Luke. Just then, a tall woman with almost white blonde hair walked through the front door of the hospital. Luke, what happened? Asked Larissa, who had sweat on her face. She had heard that one of her students was in the hospital in an emergency. You useless piece of shit, screamed Marilyn hysterically at Tyler, who was imprisoned in the cave. Just a few minutes ago, he had escaped from two people who had seriously injured him, and now he was being tortured by Marilyn. Sorry, ARRG Chach, cried Tyler in pain, as Marilyn shocked him powerfully with a taser. You just had to assassinate a fucking outcast, and on top of failing you got your ass kicked, said Marilyn, clicking her tongue. If the monster she was handling didn't get her the human body part she needed, she wouldn't be able to do the ritual to revive her ancestor. Since it was the Harvest Festival, Marilyn thought it was the ideal occasion to assassinate an outcast student or two as they finally left Nevermore. Her target was Luke Poe. She didn't count that he would be so powerful and could defeat Tyler in his Hyde form. That brat Wednesday is also stronger than I thought. However, that damn Poe is much stronger. He can fly, and he took on Tyler in close combat, thought Marilyn with a frown. Tyler told her about the battle, and from her point of view, Luke was the key and the one who had the most prominence in the fight. His blows were severe, and he didn't need to hide in the shadows waiting to deliver a killing blow. Also, if he could fly, he could have flown and attacked from that distance and hide with objects such as trees, etc. Easy. It's not your fault, Tyler. Get some sleep. I'll go get a first aid kit to fix you up, said Marilyn in a kind tone, making a 360-degree turn. Okay, thank you, said Tyler, relieved. His eyelids closed wearily. Today was a very exhausting day. Within seconds, he was sleeping against the cold rock like a baby. Marilyn looked coldly at Tyler again. She hated outcasts, but she depended on this half of Hyde to accomplish her plan. Once she revived Crackstone, she could assassinate him, though she would lose a good puppet. Although a useful puppet, once I revive Crackstone, I will be able to know the ritual to be just as powerful as him. A Hyde will be nothing, thought Marilyn with a grotesque smile. At that moment, Marilyn heard several footsteps approaching her location. She turned her head and looked at the unwanted guests with alertness. She did not know who these people were wearing black cloaks, and on their faces were masks. "Who are you people?" asked Marilyn cautiously. She reached in her pocket and gripped a syringe tightly. If she injected it into a person, no matter how hard an outcast suffered a lot of pain. There were 5 hooded people. The leader was in the middle. His face was not visible, and he was over 2 meters tall. His build was thin. Calm down. We came for a chat. Marilyn Thornhill, or rather Laurel Gates, said the tall hooded man. On the outside, Marilyn's expression remained unchanged. However, inside she was very surprised and alarmed. How do they know my identity? Thought Marilyn, feeling nervous. From the aura she felt from these people, they seemed to be outcasts. The 6-foot-plus man had a suffocating aura about him. I don't know what you're talking about, said Marilyn, as she thought a mile a minute, looking for a way to escape or kill these people using Tyler. Too bad her puppet was in bad shape and recovering energy. Let's not waste time playing dumb. We know you are a descendant of Joseph Crackstone and that you want to revive him. We are here to help you, said the man in a calm tone. He didn't care if Marilyn tried anything. He could easily defeat her no matter how much she used the half-hide, who was sleeping peacefully. Help me? Asked Marilyn. Yes. As you may have realized, one hide won't be enough to defeat certain outcasts and even genius students. So we will lend you a hand, so you can accomplish your plan, replied the hooded man. How exactly will you help me? Asked Marilyn. With this, replied the hooded man, pulling out of his sleeve a test tube with a black-colored liquid substance. You just have to inject it into Hyde. That way his power will increase, and tonight's defeat will not be repeated. He added, shaking the test tube slightly. Why are they helping me? You must want something in return, said Marilyn, knowing that no one would help you just because in this world. With the Hyde, you must murder Luke Poe. We know you need body parts for the ritual. Kill Luke Poe and use his body part for the Crackstone revival ritual, replied the hooded man. So they belong to the Spellmans, thought Marilyn, smiling internally. Now she understood who these people were. As a person who kept to the shadows, and her mortal enemies were the outcasts, she gathered a lot of information about them. She managed to learn something of an old grudge between the Spellmans and the Poes that went back over 100 years. The families would not rest until they exterminated each other, and it looked like the Spellmans would win this battle. Fine, I accept. I'll kill Luke Poe. If that liquid helps me empower my Hyde, Marilyn replied. She wanted to murder the Poe boy anyway. She hated him. In her classes, he was always arrogant and made fun of her. I hope you keep your word, said the hooded man, throwing the test tube at him. Without another word, he left the cave along with the other 4 who did not speak during the entire talk. They're safe for now, Spellman. Then they will be the next to die once Crackstone revives, thought Marilyn, examining the tube. She didn't think they had fooled her, so she would use this substance. She knew the Spellmans wanted to murder the Poes, so it made sense that they would give her this in exchange for her murdering Luke. This way, the chances of being blamed for murdering an outcast within an educational institution of outcasts is lower. They will be able to end the grudge of hundreds of years once and for all, and not let their latest enemy continue to grow stronger. The 5 hooded men, after exiting the cave, began to run through the forest at rapid speed. Are we seriously going to ask for the help of a normie? One hooded person asked in disgust. Her tone of voice was sharp and annoyed. Luke would recognize her immediately. Sabrina Spellman, or whatever her name was. If you had completed the mission Father gave you, we wouldn't be here, but you failed, said another hooded person in a mocking tone. Shut up. Luke Poe's strength was underestimated. It's not my fault I was given false information, Sabrina said, angrily. Underestimated? Didn't you say it was an easy mission? Father trusted you because of your 2 auras, but you weren't up to the task, said the hooded person hiding envy. Rowan was admitted to the hospital as a victim of a bear attack. Larissa had to personally talk to everyone involved in the Hyde attack to conceal the incident, also to hide the fact that Rowan attempted to murder Wednesday. It would not be good for the school for those 2 things to come out. Luckily for her, Wednesday did not report Rowan. As for her parents, they heard about the incident and respected their daughter's decision. Morticia and Gomez believed it was a good experience for Wednesday to try to get killed. That's why they sent her to Nevermore. Strange parents. Of course, Rowan was expelled from Nevermore. They couldn't leave a psychologically unstable boy at the school. The reasons were secret. All the students, except those involved, thought he left school because of personal problems. Rowan was still in Jericho General Hospital recovering. The normie cops asked them some questions about the attack on Rowan, thinking it might have something to do with the murders of the past few days, but they came up with nothing useful. The attack on Rowan was sealed as a simple bear attack. The hospital ward was plunged into almost total darkness. Only the soft hum of the machines and the occasional beeping of the vital signs monitor broke the silence of the night. Rowan lay in bed, his breaths slow and heavy, still recovering. The curtains, drawn tightly closed, kept the moonlight from entering the room. The darkness was total. Suddenly, one of those shadows seemed to move, slowly taking shape. A figure emerged from the darkest corner of the room. It was Wednesday, and she walked slowly toward Rowan. She stopped at the side of the bed and watched him without saying a word. Rowan's eyes opened slowly, as if he felt the presence of something or someone watching him in the dark. His eyes met Wednesday's black eyes that looked like the abyss itself. A great fear invaded Rowan. His heart rate began to rise, and his breaths increased. He thought Wednesday was coming to murder him and end the grudge. "Calm down," Wednesday said, her voice monotonous and cold as always. "I'm not here to kill you. Though if you scream, you will lose your head," she added, materializing her dark scythe that made Rowan tremble. Rowan tried to sit up, but sharp pain forced him to lie down again, gasping, "What do you want?" Wednesday leaned slightly, stepping into the meager beam of light coming from the hallway under the door. Her face seemed paler than usual, and her presence was very scary, or so Rowan thought, who feared for his life. "I want to continue our conversation from a few hours ago, before the Hyde almost murdered you. Why did you want to kill me instead of Luke Poe?" asked Wednesday in a threatening tone. They were both in the stupid drawing Rowan showed her, but the boy only wanted to kill her. "It's not because of what you think. My mother told me that you would be the main cause of Nevermore's destruction. Luke Poe's importance was minor, though he must also be eliminated," Rowan replied quickly. He didn't want Wednesday to cut off his head with the scythe. Wednesday nodded internally. If she was the main cause, it would be better to eliminate her first rather than focus on another variable. "So, what did it mean that Luke Poe appears in the drawing?" asked Wednesday. "I don't remember," said Rowan, gripping his 100 painfully. "His powers are driving him crazy," thought Wednesday disdainfully. Psychics with weak and unstable minds were prone to being driven mad by their powers. "Remember, or else you'll lose your head," said Wednesday, pressing the scythe to Rowan's neck. She didn't feel sorry for Rowan. She just wanted answers, and if those satisfied her, she would let this pathetic psychic live. Rowan, with his life threatened, closed his eyes and began to remember, as painful as it was. He wanted to live if possible. "Your partner," Rowan said after a few seconds haltingly. "My partner," repeated Wednesday, thinking of Enid, who was her roommate. "Luke Poe is your partner. The person who will help you destroy Nevermore. Or not. His role is changeable." "I don't understand." "Hurts," said Rowan. For every sentence he said, his tone increased, and he felt more pain in his head, as if his brain was about to explode. Before Rowan could scream any louder, Wednesday gave him a sharp blow to the back of the head, knocking him out on the spot. How useless, thought Wednesday, who had more questions than answers. At least she got some information. She heard footsteps and knew someone was approaching. "Luke Poe, my partner," thought Wednesday with a strange expression as she disappeared into the shadows. Several days had passed since Hyde's attack. Rowan had already left Jericho and was no longer a student at Nevermore. That day after class, Luke was called into Larissa's office. When he walked in, he noticed another person sitting across from Larissa. Her 2 long braids and black hair made him recognize the person immediately. Wednesday Addams. It looked like she had been there for a while, as they were both having tea. So, they had had a conversation. "Would you like to talk to both of us?" thought Luke as he approached Principal Larissa's desk. "You wanted to talk to me, Principal?" asked Luke. "Yes, Luke. Sit down. I wanted to talk to both of you," said Larissa, motioning with her hand for Luke to take a seat. Luke sat down and looked at Wednesday, who was also looking at him, both with thoughts of their own. Luke was tempted to read the goth girl's thoughts, but held back. He didn't know if she had any defense or anything. Although he could read her mind, since he considers his mind reading much better than before, Wednesday could feel someone's intrusion in her mind, and here, there's only one psychic without telling her. So, she would know it was Luke. "You both fought the hide, right?" asked Larissa, and they both nodded slightly. "I heard they gave him a good fight and had the upper hand. Thanks to that, none of the students were hurt." "Thank you for protecting your classmates," said Larissa gratefully. "If these two genius students were not there, Rowan would likely have died, and who knows what other casualties there would have been." "Stop, both of you," said the tall hooded man before Sabrina exploded and attacked her brother. "Last year, Sid died on Raven Island. That was a mistake that can't be made again. Now we're in a difficult position. The outcast police are suspicious of us about the Raven Island attack. It's better to use a third party and have them take care of killing Luke Poe," explained the hooded man in a calm tone. The Spellman family had underestimated Luke's strength, so now they were in a complex situation. Sid's identity was discovered by the outcast police, and by doing an investigation, they were able to learn that this werewolf was related to the Spellmans, which raised suspicions. Thanks to the Spellmans having the best lawyers and people within the Outcast Council, they were able to defend themselves against the accusations. Sid the werewolf acted on his own. They were not involved, or so they claimed. Grudges between outcast families were legal, and both families could be at war without the authorities sticking their noses in. However, if the families involved third parties, things changed. Attacking Nevermore, America's premier school for outcasts, was serious business, and murdering one of the students was a crime. If this attack was planned by the Spellmans to kill Luke Poe, they could not let it go, for they had endangered several students who had no part in the grudge between the families. Sabrina, remembering how her assassination attempt on Raven Island failed, clenched her teeth in fury and said nothing. She felt a stinging pain in her left eye. It was now healed to perfection, but her father let her be one-eyed for several months to learn from her grave mistake. "What if the normie doesn't keep her word?" asked one of the hooded men. "If she revives Crackstone, she will likely attack Nevermore, and Luke Poe will die there by his hand. So, it also serves us well if she completes the ritual. Then we will kill her for not keeping her word," the tall hooded man said. He didn't care if Crackstone attacked Nevermore and killed many outcasts. His mission was to assassinate Luke Poe. Nothing more than that. "We'll kill her, anyway," he added after a few seconds. They couldn't leave Marilyn alive after this. "I understand," nodded the hooded man who had argued with Sabrina. "Are we going to help in the resurrection of Crackstone?" "He is our mortal enemy," commented a hooded man who had not spoken so far. "Crackstone is a human who made deals with demons to exterminate all outcasts. He killed many, but he was far from succeeding. His power is good, but it's nothing to worry about. After he attacks Nevermore and makes a killing, the outcast police will send their agents and kill him," replied the tall hooded man. "As to your question, our mission is to assassinate Luke Poe using any method necessary. If Crackstone must be revived, he will be," he added, and the other hooded man nodded. "I didn't fight that hide to save anyone. I only fought because I wanted to," Wednesday said without agreeing to receive thanks. Luke only nodded slightly. In his case, he did protect Enid, Xavier, Gia, and the others. Otherwise, he wouldn't have flown at full speed to kick Hyde in the head, who was about to jump at Gia and the others. He even saved Rowan, though he did so in consideration of Larissa and Nevermore. "I fell in love and saved several people," thought Luke, looking back on what happened. When he walked into Nevermore, he would never think he would save anyone, let alone fall in love with a girl. "Well, if you say that, I don't know about giving you the rewards I had thought about," said Larissa, taking a sip from her cup of tea. "What rewards?" asked Luke, interested. He had already lost the VIP badge that allowed him to go to the exclusive bathroom with a jacuzzi and many more amenities. As for the exclusive swimming pool, it wasn't something he cared much about. 3 months to use the reps' bathrooms. Also, I will give them 2 days off so they can visit Jericho. You haven't used the ones you won in the competition yet, so you will have 4 days. If you want something specific, just ask me. I will see if I can offer it to you or not," Larissa replied with a smile. She had to reward the heroes of her school. Wednesday's face wavered at the use of the exclusive bathroom for 3 months. It was much better to bathe there because of all the amenities and that it was a bath all to yourself. You weren't supposed to share with the other students. However, she is very stubborn and would not back down. I don't want the reward. Don't fight to protect anyone, she said again. Fine. If that's what you want, Larissa said with a shrug. Then I'll have 6 months to use the VIP bathroom? Asked Luke, hopefully. Just because she turns down the reward doesn't mean your reward is twice as valuable. It stays the same, Larissa replied. Wednesday, you can come back now. Luke, you stay, said Larissa, and Wednesday left the office without even saying goodbye. Typical of her. Natasha still hasn't returned. Do you know where she went? Asked Larissa after they were both alone. To collect evidence against the Spellmans, Luke answered vaguely. Larissa, from the letter she read from Sophie several months ago, was aware that the Spellmans had made deals with demons. Although the only proof she had was the letter written by Sophie, Luke's deceased mother. Where? If she told me, I could help her, Larissa asked. She wants to keep almost everything a secret. She won't even tell me 100% of things to me. Who knows where she is now? Luke replied, shaking his head. It was a lie, though. Natasha had told him where she was. Besides, they weren't just the clues his parents had hidden. Collected. They were also the clues from the previous Poe, who fought and died fighting the Spellmans, like his grandparents. So, searching for these clues was a very delicate matter. The information had to be kept as secret as possible. So, Natasha told him not to tell anyone about this. Only he, she, and Edgar, who is a ghost, know. It's true. She was always like that. As for the 4 days you can leave Nevermore, I'm sorry, but I won't let you go out. It's dangerous, Larissa said, changing the subject. If he were a normal student, she would allow it. But he's not. She even thought the Hyde attack was about the Spellmans, but after learning that Hyde wanted to murder Rowan and not Luke, she dismissed it. As for that, Natasha permitted me to leave if I want to, and I have days allowed, Luke said, showing a conversation he had with the redhead on his cell phone to Larissa. They usually talk telepathically, but it's over 1,000 kilometers away, so the link doesn't work. Oh, I see. I'll get in touch with her to confirm. If so, you can leave, though I don't recommend it given your situation, Larissa said with an odd expression. The sensible thing for her to do is for Luke not to leave Nevermore. I'll only go out if I have to, said Luke. Natasha let him roam free in Jericho for a reason. Luke told her that he possessed 3 auras. Since he discovered his 3rd aura at Nevermore, he hadn't had time to tell her that he discovered he possessed a white aura, as the redhead was too busy tracking down clues. Before she left Luke at Nevermore this year, she was able to test his strength and was no longer worried about him. She knew he could stand up for himself. After all, he was a 3 aura user. She had never seen a natural 3 aura user until now. That's all. If we need anything, just tell me. I'll help you, Larissa said, committed to helping her best friend's son, who had died. Okay, thanks, Luke said gratefully, saying goodbye to Larissa and leaving the office.